Chapter 340. Zhang Feng wandered aimlessly around Chang'an Street. Most of the things he saw were brown, green, and brownish-yellow locusts. The sky was filled with locusts. In the end, there were so many locusts that people couldn't even move. Zhang Feng, with his head full of locusts, returned to the tavern resentfully. Damn it, it seemed like he couldn't afford to eat vegetables this year. Zhang Feng muttered as he kicked a stone and slowly walked forward. When he finally saw his own tavern, he saw a person sticking his butt out and peeking through the crack in the door. The person was wearing a purple robe. Who else could it be other than Lao Li? Hey! Lao Li, is there something wrong with your eyes? I've already locked the door. Why are you still peeping? Zhang Feng appeared silently behind Li Shimin. His voice scared Li Shimin so much that he almost passed out on the spot. When he turned around and saw that it was Zhang Feng, he patted his chest and heaved a sigh of relief. I say, kid, can't you make a sound when you walk? You scared me so much. Li Shimin muttered as he urged Zhang Feng to open the door. As soon as they entered, the locusts that filled the sky were blocked outside. Li Shimin said with a worried face, Brother, you saw the locusts that filled the sky. Didn't you say that this thing has been prevented? And last time, didn't you say that the locust plague would only break out next year? Look at this. What should we do? The locusts that filled the sky even affected Li Shimin's back garden, the Imperial Garden, and the Imperial Plantation. How could Li Shimin not be worried? And the Imperial City was not spared either. The locusts that filled the sky and covered the earth were even present in the political announcement hall. This caused the people from the Imperial Astronomer to swindle them again during the morning assembly. The entire assembly was filled with cries and cries. There were all sorts of things, such as calamities descending from the heavens and whatnot. Li Shimin was about to explode from anger. Only then did he come to find Zhang Feng to drink to relieve his boredom. Lao Li. Don't be anxious. Why don't you take a look and see if my prediction is accurate? What's there to approve? Li Shimin spread out his hands and glared, this thing is about to eat people. If it continues like this, we'll have to deal with it. What do you think we should do now that the food supply has been affected? Alas. Zhang Feng slowly patted Li Shimin's shoulder. Lao Li. Don't rush. Drink a mouthful of wine first to calm your nerves. Look at the emperor, he's not in a hurry. You're just a commoner, why are you in a hurry? With that little industry of yours, I don't think it's as good as your salt-making skills. What business with Shenla? Or the cooperative? Just one of them is already your total income for the past year, right? What's the hurry? If the industry of Longyu Road is gone, then it's gone. What's money? Money is a bastard. If it's gone, can't we just earn it again? Also, Lao Li, let me tell you a secret. Zhang Feng's casual expression made Li Shimin gnash his teeth. He wanted to punch this guy's face into mush. But he held it in and said speechlessly, what time is it now? Do you still have money? If this continues, it'll be over sooner or later. You don't know. The price of food has doubled now. Even if you said there would be a locust plague, the food you asked me to store won't be enough to last until this time next year. This is not a solution, right? We'll starve to death sooner or later. Li Shimin poured out his grievances. Zhang Feng was alone. This disaster was nothing to him, but Li Shimin was different. He had a big family business. The entire Tang dynasty belonged to his family. Now that this was happening, how could he not be anxious? Millions of people were waiting for him to feed them. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimin's shoulder and whispered, Lao Li, this is the time for us to get rich. Let me tell you first, if you want to do it, we'll do it together. If you don't want to, Lao Tzu will do it alone. When the time comes, don't be jealous. Hearing this, Li Shimin was stunned. He knew Zhang Feng's temper very well. As long as he was being mean, he would definitely say something important. However, as soon as he said something serious, you had to be careful. But now, could it be that this guy was not bluffing, but pretending? Li Shimin couldn't help but ask, tell me about it? Zhang Feng leisurely took out a few plums from his bosom. As he ate, he said, actually, this method is exactly the same as the one we came up with to control the locusts. What? The same? I'm afraid you don't know the current situation. At that time, the locusts were still eggs. Everything was easy. Just get a hoe and dig. And with your bluffing skills, you did make a lot of money. But it's different now. With locusts all over the sky, even if you want to bluff, you have to be able to bluff. Look, at that time, the eggs were yellow and shiny. After frying them and biting into them, they were all meat and oil. After coating them with flour, even if people knew, they could still eat them. But who hasn't seen these locusts before? These things have been pests since ancient times. Tell me, if I made these things for you to eat, would you eat them? Li Shimin was speechless. But Zhang Feng mysteriously came out of the kitchen with a dustpan full of fried yellow locusts. He waved his hand at Li Shimin and said, Lao Li, look, what is this? Chapter 341. When Li Shimin saw this, his hair instantly stood on end. Brother Zhang Feng, munch, munch. Under Li Shimin's horrified gaze, Zhang Feng grabbed a handful of grasshoppers and stuffed them into his mouth. The spicy and salt-flavored grasshoppers instantly spread out in Zhang Feng's mouth. Seeing this, Li Shimin's heart pounded again. Fortunately, he had the experience of eating insect eggs before. Although it was a little disgusting this time, Li Shimin managed to hold back and not vomit. However, looking at Zhang Feng eating with relish, Li Shimin couldn't hold back anymore. Brother Zhang Feng, you can't eat this. Even if it's valuable, you can't degrade yourself. Degrade himself? Zhang Feng was dumbfounded. This thing, in his era, had already become king snack, wasn't that good? Moreover, it was a snack that was suitable for both young and old. How did this become degrade himself? Zhang Feng threw the dustpan on the table. In an instant, the fried grasshoppers shook in the dustpan, making Li Shimin's hair stand up again. Zhang Feng drank a mouthful of wine happily, then said, Lao Li. Come, the insect eggs from last time weren't as delicious as this one. Let me ask you, after eating the insect eggs last time, did you have diarrhea, stomach pain, or any other discomfort? No. Li Shimin shook his head and said truthfully, no. Isn't that enough? Let me ask you, how's the effect of tonifying the kidney? Not bad. Zhang Feng spread his hands and said, isn't that enough? Think about it. That thing had such a strong effect when it was young. Think about it. How can the effect of this thing be bad? Zhang Feng quietly whispered into Li Shimin's ear, revealing a smile that anyone could understand, and said, Lao Li, this thing is good for the kidneys. Aren't you going to try it? Li Shimin was dumbfounded. Really? Why would I, Zhang Feng, lie to you? Sigh, old Li, what the *ck, when have I ever tricked you? Zhang Feng was not willing to do that. Glaring at him, he said as he ate, it's up to you whether you want to eat or not. When the time comes, I will set up a factory in Chang'an, no, in every place. I will only process and produce this stuff. Think about it, Lao Tzu said that this stuff can strengthen the sex drive. Think about it, who wouldn't want to buy it? Even if Lao Tzu says that this thing is worth 10 taels of silver, think about those high-ranking officials and wealthy families. Wouldn't they want it? You know this. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. Was this thing really as magical as Zhang Feng said it was? Li Shimin picked out a relatively small grasshopper from the dustpan, closed his eyes, and threw it into his mouth. But the moment Li Shimin's teeth bit into the grasshopper, his entire expression froze. The taste of salt and pepper, as well as the fresh and crisp taste of the grasshopper, was more delicious than chicken, more tender than rabbit, or even snake meat. Is it delicious? Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimon's shocked expression, then patted Li Shimon's shoulder. Lao Li. That's how it is. Last time, you also earned a lot from the insect eggs. This time, look, the whole sky is filled with them. What is this? This is money flying in the sky. Don't you want to put it in your pocket? Of course I do. But, this thing. I said, even if I can accept it now, can the people accept it? Think about it, how do you deal with this thing? Believe it or not, if you throw out a dustpan of grasshoppers, your legs will be broken in minutes. Li Shimon quickly stuffed grasshoppers into his mouth, while pointing at Zhang Feng. Zhang Feng's eyes were wide open. I say, Lao Li, you can say that, but this grasshopper, can you eat it slowly? You can even make something like this in your residence? Didn't I give you the secret recipe last time? Why are you snatching it from me? Snatching it is one thing, but why are you insulting me like this? Do you want to keep it all to yourself? Zhang Feng suddenly understood. This guy wants to say that this thing is useless, and then secretly make a fortune? This won't do. Li Shimon's mouth twitched. He glanced at Zhang Feng's suspicious face and said, how can this be? Wasn't I just telling the truth? This thing, I like to eat, but you have to know if the people can accept it. This thing is not only you, even if it is covered in flour, the people can still see this thing at a glance. It is a grasshopper. You don't have to worry about this. Since I, Zhang Feng, dared to say it, then there is nothing that I, Zhang Feng, can't do. Let me ask you now, do you dare to do it with me? Zhang Feng patted his chest, picked up the bowl of wine, and took a big gulp. Then, he said slowly, actually, you know the advantages of this grasshopper. It strengthens the body and contains many things that you don't know. Look, what does the grasshopper eat? It eats grass, leaves, and grains, right? This is the essence of grains. Oldly, all you need to do is stand there and shout, this thing can strengthen the sex drive and the body. Eating 1 gene of it is equivalent to eating 1 gene of pork. Go and see if this thing is hard to sell or not. Chapter 342. Zhang Feng couldn't possibly tell him that the locusts were high in protein and amino acids, could he? Even if he said it out loud, Li Shimon could only reply with hee. The problem was that he didn't understand. Zhang Feng was also excited. This was a no-cost business. Even if Li Shimon didn't participate, he would still do it. This was a no-cost business. However, Li Shimon wasn't happy about it. He asked, I know about these things. I've eaten the eggs too. It's just as you said. But there are too many of them. You only think about making money, but have you thought about how harmful these things are? Let's not talk about other things. How are we going to catch all of them? As he spoke, Li Shimon pointed at the dense locusts crawling on the paper window and smiled bitterly. Let's think about how to get rid of these things first. Otherwise, I can guarantee that we'll all starve in less than a month. Well, Zhang Feng also realized the seriousness of the problem. He thought about how to get rid of the locusts and came up with 3 plans in an instant. This is His Majesty's business. Let's not worry about it, shall we? Not worry? Li Shimon's eyes were wide open. You say it as if you're not harmed by these things. Let me ask you, where are you going to buy food in a month? What are you going to eat and drink? There will be locusts everywhere. Even if these things are really so good, we can't eat locusts every day, right? Li Shimon's words made sense. Zhang Feng couldn't help but stop eating the locusts. He touched his greasy chin and thought for a while before saying, if it were me, I have 3 ways to get rid of the locusts effectively. What ways? Li Shimon hurried over when he heard that. The chicken and duck army was not very reliable now. He had thought about it, but when he saw the dense locusts in the imperial garden, how many chickens and ducks would it take to finish all of them? This method was definitely a drop in the bucket. I have 3 ideas. Lao Li, which one do you want to hear first? Li Shimin frowned. Don't talk about the chicken and duck army. He's not reliable at all. Not a chicken and duck army. Zhang Feng faintly smiled. Now, the chicken and duck army can only be considered as auxiliary troops. Remember my first method well. The first one is to use medicine. Insecticide. Li Shimin's eyes lit up. Are you talking about arsenic? Get lost. Zhang Feng's face darkened when he heard that. How many of these do you have? How much can you afford? Even if you can afford it, let's not talk about whether this thing can poison the locusts to death. I can guarantee that before the locusts are poisoned to death, your head will be chopped off. Can't you use your brain? You can use arsenic on this thing. Do you have money to burn? Or do you want to die? Have you thought about it? Once you use arsenic, I estimate that in no time, more than half of the people in Chang and city will be killed by you. Think about it carefully. Do you want to live or do you want something else? Li Shimin's face changed abruptly when he heard that. He asked hurriedly, then tell me, what should I use this thing? Mugwort, plus some other things, realgar powder, and that honey locust. Mix these things with a little bit of pepper and petunia, then boil it into water and spray it out. Even if people accidentally eat it, they will only have a stomachache for a while, and then nothing will happen to them. Moreover, this thing is cheap and can be easily obtained. Tell me, why do you like arsenic so much? Doesn't this harmless thing taste good? Zhang Feng scolded Li Shimin harshly. The key point was that he was afraid of this grandson. If he really dared to do that, there would be a big problem. Putting aside how long it would take for the locusts to take effect after eating arsenic, as long as they crawled on the food you ate and ate it, wouldn't that be the end of you? He really didn't use his F*king brain. Li Shimin was also scolded by Zhang Feng as if he had done something wrong. Moreover, he was also carefully thinking about the meaning behind it. He had just casually mentioned the arsenic. Who would dare to use it? It was a controlled item. If anyone wanted to use it, they would have to report it to the authorities. Even if he wanted to use it, he might not be able to get it. Moreover, with the production of this thing, it was impossible to deal with so many locusts. However, Li Shimin only needed to think about the method that Zhang Feng mentioned and instantly knew the price. It was less than 10 copper coins in total. Not only was it not expensive, but those things were everywhere in the mountains and plains. They would never be used up. What was the most important thing? It was harmless to people. That was the most important thing. However, when he thought of Zhang Feng's 2 other methods, Li Shimin couldn't help but ask excitedly, Brother Zhang Feng, what do you think is the other method? What is it? Zhang Feng stretched out 2 fingers and shook them. No, there is one more. In fact, I have countless. Which one do you want to hear first? Li Shimin hurriedly asked, then tell me all of them? Well. All right then, I'll give you a country bumpkin like you. Remember, the second method is fire attack. Chapter 343. Fire attack? Could it be that Zhang Feng really wanted to use fire to burn it down? Wouldn't he burn down the entire Tang dynasty? Brother Zhang Feng, isn't your method a bit too much? Let's not talk about anything else. Just this Chang and city, wouldn't you burn down Longtu Mountain and Qinling Mountain? Isn't that a bit too much? What the F*ck? Zhang Feng was speechless. I say, Lao Li, what are you doing? Am I not giving you an example? I said that if I were the emperor, I would do this. Can you listen to me first? Fine, fine, fine. I want to see how you plan to burn down a mountain. Then, you will lose your life before you even enter the imperial court. Li Shimin was also interested. When Zhang Feng heard this, he was instantly unwilling. He thought to himself, Old Li, what the hell do you know? Although Lao Tzu didn't understand, Lao Tzu had seen in TV dramas and novels about how to prevent fire from locusts. What do you know? Lao Li. This is just my guess. As for how the higher-ups will do it, it's not something for us to worry about. Don't get agitated. Aren't we just drinking and chatting? Don't get agitated. Zhang Feng patted Li Shimon's shoulder, picked up his wine bowl, and clinked it with him. Li Shimon then slowly said, I'm just worried. If you really do that, then won't you be completely finished? Your talent in this life, won't it be so? Lao Li, there's something wrong with you. Zhang Feng pointed at Li Shimon's head and said speechlessly, aren't we chatting? Do you think I'm that stupid? Why would I burn it down? What I'm saying is, if I were that person. Let's talk about this fire now. Think about it, who the F***ck said that they had to burn the mountain? Did the locusts migrate in groups? When the locusts are coming, we only need to clear out a fire belt that is 10 feet wide at the place where the locusts will pass through. Then, we can burn a large number of locusts to death. Do you think it's feasible? Why did they have to burn down the mountain? What are you thinking about? Hearing this, Li Shimon felt relieved. But after glancing at Zhang Feng, he muttered, who told you not to make it clear? I thought you were talking about burning the mountain. Alright, that's not a long-term solution. And many places are not suitable for this thing, such as Cheng and City. What should we do? Did you forget about the pesticide I mentioned? Zhang Feng smiled mysteriously. Like I said, I have countless ways to deal with these things for you in a matter of minutes. Alright, stop bragging. Li Shimon was speechless. Let's not talk about Cheng and City first. Let's talk about the locusts in Longyu Road. How are we going to deal with them? My hundreds of acres of medicinal herb land. They're all F***king destroyed. As he spoke, Li Shimon squeezed out a few drops of tears from his eyes. Zhang Feng curled his lips. He said speechlessly, alright. How old are you? Why are you shedding tears over such a trivial matter? By the way, I told you to prepare an army of chickens and ducks last time. How many did you get? Li Shimon's expression froze when he heard this. Zhang Feng looked at him and lost his composure. Why? You didn't do it? Well, it was still early the last time. And at that time, the locusts were in the soil. I thought it was too early to do it now, so I didn't do it. Besides, there was that thing after that, right? So. Zhang Feng was stunned. I say, Lao Li, you're really something. I told you last time that this thing is good for dealing with locusts. Now you. Alright, let's not talk about this. If you don't have it, you can do it now. It's not too late. You can even make some money. Li Shimon hurriedly changed the topic. Well, didn't you say that there are many ways to deal with them? Tell me about the chickens and ducks. It's not too late to go and buy them now. There's definitely a way. But I don't know if it's profitable. I still think that collecting locusts and learning from the eggs is as reliable. Alright, stop glaring at me. Be careful, your eyeballs might fall out. Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimon's glare and changed the topic gloomily. Actually, if you use a little bit of the insecticide I made in the pharmacy when you attack with fire, the effect will be better. And this thing, even if it's sprayed in Cheng and City, it won't poison the people. As I said before, let's not talk about this method. There's also an army of chickens and ducks. But you don't have it, and I don't have it either. If you have it, you can burn it with fire, then smoke it with insecticide, and eat it with chickens, ducks, and pigs. Basically, it will only take a month for the locusts in the Tang dynasty to disappear completely. But, it depends on what the emperor wants to do. Zhang Feng spread his hands speechlessly. He didn't say anything else. However, Zhang Feng looked at Li Shimon, who was frowning and deep in thought. He couldn't help but ask curiously, Lao Li, I've been wondering where your mansion is. I've been wandering in Cheng and City for so long, why haven't I seen it? And damn it, what are you worried about? What does this have to do with you? Even if the sky falls, the emperor will hold it up for us. Maybe you just wait. I bet that the emperor will think of a way tomorrow morning, or maybe not long after. Let's think about how to use this opportunity to set up the factory. If you don't want to do it, I'll do it alone. Chapter 344. For the past 3 days, Li Shimin had been worried about the locusts and had no idea what to do. But he didn't expect Zhang Feng to come up with so many ideas just by chatting for a while. Although the burning method seemed a little vulgar, it made a lot of sense when he thought about it carefully. If it was near the Shirley slope outside Jianghu city, he only needed to cut down all the weeds and trees near the Ba River bridge that connected to Jianghu city. Then he only needed to set a fire and pour the pesticides that Zhang Feng mentioned on the fire. Wouldn't that be more effective? But why was this kid so obsessed with money this time? His 3 sentences were all about money? Could it be that there was a trick to it? Something was strange. Li Shimin thought for a while and asked, Brother Zhang Feng, how are you going to deal with these locusts? The economy of Jianghu has just started. If you do this, won't it cause a conflict with the imperial court? How can that be? This time, Zhang Feng was not happy. Do you know that once this thing of mine is produced, it won't cause a conflict with the imperial court's cooperative, but it will further stimulate consumption? What? Li Shimin was shocked. How could a small locusts be possible? Brother Zhang Feng, are you kidding me? Kidding? Zhang Feng was furious. I treat you as my brother, and you say I'm kidding? Have you ever seen me, Zhang Feng, joke? Li Shimin curled his lips. Zhang Feng was instantly furious. Hey! You don't believe me, do you? Come. Zhang Feng pulled Li Shimin to the backyard. He tied a rope to the tree in the backyard, and then spread oil paper under the tree. With a pull and a shake, the locusts fell on the paper. Li Shimin didn't understand what Zhang Feng was going to do. He watched carefully. Zhang Feng slowly moved the locusts from the ground into a basin. Then, he filled the basin with water, sprinkled a large amount of salt, and slowly rubbed it before scooping it out of the water. Li Shimin was dumbfounded. What was he trying to do? He had no choice but to follow Zhang Feng to dry the cleaned locusts on the floor of the backyard. At this time, Zhang Feng said, I said before that locusts have a high medicinal value, and they are an important Chinese medicine. They can treat kidney deficiency, and the effect of strengthening one's yang and kidney is 10 times better than that of insect eggs. Think about it. How much did you earn from the locust's eggs? Are there any objections? I don't think so. Do you know why? Li Shimin scratched his head in confusion. Indeed, no one objected to the locust's eggs. Many people even saw it as a profitable business. Zhang Feng slapped Li Shimin's shoulder. You don't understand, do you? As long as the publicity is done well, anything can be used for business. Think about it. You just ate the locusts. You said that people don't like it. Then, if I grind it into powder and sell it as bone-strengthening powder, do you think anyone will buy it? And the price at that time will be much higher. Now, a caddy of fried locusts can be sold for 3 to 5 copper coins. When the time comes, the price will be doubled. Think about it. If we sell it at such a high price, how much lower will the price be? Once the price is raised, even if the locusts don't have an army of chickens and ducks, all the people in Jianghu will go crazy to catch them. While they were talking, the water on the locusts had dried up. Zhang Feng grabbed a handful of locusts and looked at them. Then, he led Li Shimin into the kitchen. He set up the fire and heated the oil. When the oil was almost done, he poured the whole basket of locusts into it. Slurp. Li Shimin had never been in the kitchen before. He was scared by this scene and trembled all over. Zhang Feng rolled his eyes again. Not long after, a basket of yellow fried locusts was ready. But this time, Zhang Feng didn't eat it directly. Instead, he sprinkled some seasonings on it while it was hot. Then, he put it into a stone mill and gently crushed it into powder. Holding a handful of powder, Zhang Feng found a bowl and washed it with boiling water. Then, he handed it to Li Shimin. "Have a taste of this stuff." While talking, Zhang Feng and Li Shimin left the kitchen and returned to the hall again. Looking at the layer of oil floating in the bowl and the yellow soup, Li Shimin endured the discomfort and took a sip. The taste was still very good. It was more delicious than the mutton soup in the palace. Li Shimin's eyes couldn't help but light up. "I understand what you mean. Although locusts are not easy to sell now, they can be made into powder. Moreover, it's bone-strengthening powder. The taste is enough to be more delicious than mutton soup. If I didn't know about this thing, would definitely think that it's some kind of delicacy." "You mean to use this thing to turn waste into treasure, and then stimulate the economic market again, right?" "Smart." Zhang Feng couldn't help but give him a thumbs up. "You're finally enlightened. But, it also depends on the emperor. Although we're so optimistic now, after all, there is the precedent of the worm eggs. Maybe the emperor has already thought of some countermeasures. But I'm sure the emperor didn't think of the worm powder. So, Lao Li, what do you think of this source of income?" Chapter 345. Li Shimin was also tempted. What about selling fried locusts one by one? Li Shimin dared to guarantee that there would be people hammering that person's head. But it was different now. As long as it was made into powder and added with some rice paste, or mixed with flour, wouldn't it become bone-strengthening powder? Looking at the layer of oil in the bowl and the tempting fragrance, Li Shimin endured the heat and blew on the sides of the bowl while carefully tasting it. The taste of this thing, if it was mixed with flour, although the quality would be reduced, but the price would be reduced by a lot. In this way, no one would be able to taste the locusts. Knowing that there was enough salt, who the F***ck would be able to taste the insects? Soon, the bowl of bone-strengthening powder was finished. Li Shimin smacked his lips and said, "Brother Zhang Feng, can this thing really strengthen bones?" "Of course." "Oh right, you want to buy a share?" Li Shimin copied Zhang Feng and spread his hands. "With such a huge profit, if I don't buy a share, wouldn't I be a fool?" "Okay. Since you want to buy a share, then we'll follow the old rules. I'll provide the technology, and you'll provide the money and manpower. And this thing, if you find a good doctor, he'll tell you whether this thing can strengthen bones or not. If people with broken bones drink this thing, drinking a bowl is equivalent to drinking a bowl of meat and bone soup. Old Li, now you know how much profit you can make, right? As long as you find someone who can boast, I believe that even that dirt can make money." Li Shimin couldn't help but twitch his mouth. "Are you asking someone to scam people?" "Scam people? Let me ask you. You've eaten the locust eggs, and you've eaten the locusts. Let me ask you, how does it taste? Is the locust eggs working? Okay, I have to go back and think about it. If possible, I'll ask Old Sun and the others to do it to recover some losses." As they walked, Li Shimin said, "As for the school, I've basically taken care of it. As for the carpentry work and the house renovation, someone will come to you later. You just need to tell them what you want to know." After Li Shimin finished speaking, he took away the rest of the fried locusts and the locust powder in the dustpan. He claimed that he was bringing it back for them to taste, but Zhang Feng seriously suspected that this guy wanted to go back and try it. When Li Shimin went out, Zhang Feng hurriedly shouted, "Lao Li. Although this thing is good, you have to control. Otherwise, if you can't get out of bed, don't blame me for not telling you. The effect of this thing is very strong." Zhang Feng didn't hide his voice at all. Li Shimin heard this and hurriedly ran away with a black face. The surrounding area was basically filled with Jianghu guard spies, as well as that trash Wei Shuyu. If these people knew about this, where would he put his face? Seeing that Li Shimin had run away. Only then did Zhang Feng put away the locusts and locust powder on the table. He made himself a bowl and added a spoonful of sugar. Only then did he lie back on the recliner happily. He drank some wine and ate the fried locusts while thinking about the tricycle. Now that he had the most important rubber, How should he make the frame of the tricycle? Should he smelt it? But he was too lazy to tinker with those things. The key was that it was too hot. Zhang Feng couldn't help but look at the iron kettle in front of him, and his eyes lit up. That's right. If he dismantled this thing and found someone to make all the parts, he could make a smaller crucible and some tenons. Wouldn't that solve the problem? The more he thought about it, the more excited Zhang Feng became. Motherf *, I am a genius. When the time came, he would ride the tricycle to Chang and City for a stroll. It would definitely be the most beautiful scenery in Chang and City. You have a carriage, but I also have my tricycle, don't I? And I can buy groceries and so on, don't I? Zhang Feng couldn't help but think of a spectacular scene. A group of loafers wearing sunglasses, wearing suits, riding bicycles, wearing big brimmed hats. Just thinking about it made him excited. The more he thought about it, the more Zhang Feng wanted to make a tricycle. How could he fall asleep now? He hurriedly got out of the tavern and found Go, Zi and Zhu, Zi in the river under a big willow tree. He asked, I have an extremely important matter right now. Do you want to help me? When they heard that Zhang Feng had something to do, the two of them didn't even wear clothes. They climbed into the river naked. The women on the street couldn't stop cursing. Brother Feng, tell us, what do you want us to do? The two of them stared at Zhang Feng excitedly with their black eyes. Zhang Feng thought for a while and said, do you know the old blacksmith in the west of the city? I have something to do here, you go and invite him here. Tell him that I have a big business deal for him. This, Uncle Wen is 80 years old. Do you want me to find Dumbo for you? Although that guy is a little stupid, he has great strength. Zhu Zi suggested a different idea. However, Zhang Feng shook his head. Go and find Uncle Wen. This job isn't heavy. It's just a craftsmanship job. Tell Uncle Wen what I said. If he does it, I'll give him 100 copper coins first. Of course, if it's iron, it'll be on him. Tell him how much it costs and I'll give him the money. Chapter 346. Taiji Palace, Imperial Study. As soon as Li Shimin entered, he didn't even have time to change his clothes before he asked, Xiao Gizi, sort out all the memorials related to the locusts for me. Yes. Seeing Li Shimin's gloomy face, Xiao Gizi hurriedly selected memorials from the mountain of documents. Li Shimin also sat on the soft couch and flipped through them one by one. A locust plague has broken out in Jiangnan province. The locusts are suspected to have come from Tubo territory. Countless victims of the Tubo disaster are rushing to the Tang dynasty territory. When he saw the memorial, Li Shimin immediately read through it and said, thoroughly investigate the source of the locusts and the losses. Expel all the people from Tubo. Then, Li Shimin looked at the next memorial. This memorial was related to Shannan province. A locust plague has broken out in Bazhou, Maozhou, Yazhou, and Jiazhou in Shannan province. The farmland has been severely damaged, and there are even signs of the locusts devouring livestock. A locust plague has broken out in Hunan province, Yaozhou, Xingzhou, Minzhou, and many other places. The forest has been severely damaged, and the food has been greatly damaged. However, there are no casualties for the time being. Li Shimin took a deep breath and looked at Long Yudeo's booklet. He took a deep breath. Then, he slowly flipped open the memorial. There were only a few words in the memorial. However, each word was like a heavy hammer that struck Li Shimin's heart. A locust plague has broken out in Xiuzi City and other places. There is no oasis within 1,000 miles. After reading this, Li Shimin's heart couldn't help but tighten. Summon Wei Zheng, Fang Xianling, Zhang Sun, and Du Ruhui to the palace immediately. Li Shimin slapped the memorial hard. He had read 5 memorials, but there were still dozens of them on his desk. What did this mean? This meant that the locust outbreak had reached a point where it couldn't be delayed. But most of them were concentrated near Tubo, and the south of the Tang dynasty was basically unaffected. What did this mean? This showed that the locust plague was really as Zhang Feng had said before. The locust plague in the Tang dynasty was basically nothing, but the key was that after the locust plague in Tubo, the locust plague directly devoured Tubo, then migrated to the Tang dynasty. Previously, Li Shimin thought that Zhang Feng was talking about next year's locust plague. This year's locust eggs had basically been cleared out from Longyu to Chang'an, and even the Tang dynasty. However, he had forgotten one thing. That was the locust plague that Zhang Feng had mentioned in Tubo. At this moment, Li Shimin suddenly understood why he had said that there would be an irreversible disaster at the end of the year, even though the locusts were almost completely under control this year. He had thought that this was Zhang Feng's guess, but from these reports and all the plans for Tubo, Li Shimin suddenly felt a kind of pressure. An irresistible pressure. A moment later, Wei Zheng and the others hurried into the imperial study of Taiji Palace. Seeing Li Shimin's gloomy face and thinking about something with his head lowered, they didn't dare to disturb him and waited quietly. After an unknown amount of time. Only then did Li Shimin slowly wake up. He looked at the people standing in front of him and waved his hand tiredly, motioning for them to sit down. Then, he said, "How's the investigation of the locust plague?" "Your Majesty, I have thoroughly investigated all the towns around Chang'an and found that although the locust plague was fierce this time, Chang'an was already prepared. Although there was a loss of grain, it was not a total loss. Now, all the wheat has been harvested, only the corn has been lost. In addition, Chang'an city's cooperative this time, basically every household has stored grain. I'm asking about the locust plague, nothing else." Li Shimin interrupted Du Ruhui's report and asked. Hearing this, Du Ruhui took a deep breath and said, "Your Majesty, about this locust plague. I have received the most detailed report. The black mass of locusts will cross the Qinling Mountains and reach Chang'an city in 5 days. I'm afraid that by then, there will be no crops in Chang'an city anymore." "What? 5 days?" Li Shimin's expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly asked, "Then, what about Longyu Dao? And what about Jiannan Dao and other places?" Li Shimin only wanted to know if the locust plague had broken out completely or if, as he had guessed, the locust plague had really moved south from Tubo and Longyu Dao. But all the information he received, every single one of them made him despair. Because the locust plague this time was really as he had guessed. It had basically spread from the north to the south. What did this mean? This meant that he still had 5 days left. Have you thought of any way to resist it? Well, Your Majesty, I have indeed thought of a way. Fang Xianling was a little hesitant. But seeing that the emperor did not say anything, he said tentatively, "I think that if we follow the method that Brother Zhang Feng came up with and use an army of chickens and ducks, it might work, but the effect, also, since you can even eat the eggs of locusts, then even though the locusts look a little ugly and horrifying, you should be able to do that too." Chapter 347. How could they not know that His Majesty had left the palace? Moreover, His Majesty had not even changed his clothes. If they were not fools, they would definitely know that His Majesty had gone to Brother Zhang Feng's place. Thinking of this, on the way to the imperial study, they squatted by the roadside and thought about what Brother Zhang Feng had said before. Only then did they come up with this wonderful idea. This was the idea that Brother Zhang Feng had mentioned earlier. Wasn't this the right time to use it? However, after saying it out loud, they felt a burst of strangeness. That was because His Majesty's face had become unusually ugly at this moment. This scene made the hearts of these wily old foxes skip a beat. Could it be that this was what His Majesty and Brother Zhang Feng were talking about? They could not help but look at each other. At the same time, they sat up quietly and waited for His Majesty's reprimand. Sure enough, not long after they sat down, Li Shimin sighed and said, "At first, I thought that you would come up with a different idea on this matter. But now, it seems that this. Alas. Your Majesty, there are other ways. I've looked up the previous methods that were suitable for controlling the locusts, but compared to the current situation, they are basically a drop in the bucket. So, we think that the best way now is to use fire." All right, all right. Li Shimin waved his hand with a headache. Where do you want me to burn? Burn the imperial city? Or burn somewhere else? Your Majesty, we are guilty of the death penalty. Wei Zheng and the others hurriedly knelt down. Li Shimin didn't even glance at them. He waved his hand and said, actually, I know that you also understand. After I came back from that small tavern, I won't beat around the bush. Brother Zhang Feng did have 3 ways. The first one is the fire attack that you mentioned. Let's make use of the favorable terrain. Let's talk about the current situation. After Li Shimin finished speaking, he pointed at the map on the wall, which was the area of Chang and city, and said, look, this is the area of the Shirley Slope. Brother Zhang Feng's idea is to cut a fire belt between Bar River and Chang and city, and then set fire to the locusts here. This, Wei Zheng and the others looked at the map. When they heard Li Shimin's words, their expressions changed. Previously, they had only thought of setting the place on fire, but as for how to do it, they really didn't know. Especially in the imperial city and Chang and city, they couldn't possibly set the entire place on fire, right? But at this moment, Li Shimin spoke again. We did not expect that you would not even think of a way. Li Shimin had mixed feelings in his heart. He said lightly, you have all dealt with medicinal herbs before. The Dragon Boat Festival has just ended. Have you forgotten something? Are you talking about mugwort and realgar? When Wei Zheng heard this, his expression suddenly changed. He hurriedly knelt and said, this subject did think of it before, but I did not know how to use it. That's why this subject is stupid. Please enlighten us, Your Majesty. Please enlighten us, Your Majesty. Li Shimin waved his hand. Do you remember what the beacon tower is used for? Beacon fire. When Wei Zheng heard this, he hurriedly said, Your Majesty, the beacon tower is a signal tower used to transmit emergency military information. Yes. That's it. Li Shimin pointed at the map and said, I just looked at the memorials. According to all the memorials, the locust outbreak is concentrated in Longyu, west of Jiangnan, and mainly around Tubo and other countries. If we light the beacon fires in these places at the same time, and we change all the fuel into medicinal herbs, insecticides, what do you think will happen? Fang Xuanling's eyes suddenly burst out a burst of light. Your Majesty, you mean to use fire to attack? That's right. Buzz. Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Zhang Sun Wuji, and Wei Zheng, who had been silent all this time, felt a muffled thunder in their minds at the same time. That's right. Jiannan Road, Shannon Road, and Longyu Road were the 3 places where the locust plague was the most serious. Then, there were more than 1,000 beacon towers in these places. If so many beacon towers and isolation belts were to light up the medicinal herbs at the same time, then, wouldn't it be easy to eliminate the locusts? Was this matter really that simple? However, at this moment, Zhang Sun Wuji, who had been silent all this time, suddenly said, Your Majesty, although this method can eliminate most of the locusts, if the dosage of the medicinal herbs is not right, and the wind blows randomly, the effect. So, what I mean is, if we can cooperate with the chicken and duck army at this time, won't it be twice the result with half the effort? When everyone heard this, they couldn't help but feel happy. Your Majesty, Lord Zhangsun is right. If we can eliminate the remaining locusts with the chicken and duck army, in less than 3 months, the locusts in the Tang dynasty will be wiped out. 3 months, Li Shimin shook his head lightly. I can't wait for 3 months. I want you to completely eliminate this plague of locusts within a month. Chapter 348. When everyone heard this, they could not help but reveal bitter expressions. Your Majesty, this plague of locusts is a punishment from the heavens. What punishment? Before Du Ruhui could finish, Li Shimin interrupted him. With a wave of his hand, palace maids entered the imperial study with large bowls of something with an alluring aroma. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, The weather is hot. Drink something good to moisten your throats and think carefully about how to deal with it. Then, tell me if this is a natural disaster or something else. As he spoke, the palace maids opened the lids of the white marble bowls in front of them. Instantly, the alluring aroma filled the hall. Everyone was puzzled. But they still stood up and said in unison, "Thank you, Your Majesty." After that, they looked at the bowls of something pale yellow and covered in oil. They couldn't tell what it was. They gently scooped up a spoonful and put it into their mouths. But in the next moment, their puzzlement disappeared. Everyone's faces were filled with surprise and surprise. "How is it? How does it taste?" Li Shimin didn't tell them that it was locust powder. He believed that if he had told them in advance, these bastards would have 100 ways to stop drinking it. But that wasn't what he wanted to see. He wanted to wait until they finished drinking before revealing the ingredients. It wasn't that Li Shimin had a bad taste, but that these guys couldn't think of a way. Could it be that none of the civil and military officials could come up with a perfect plan? Therefore, he wanted to use this to punish them. On the other hand, he wanted to leave a deep impression on them, just like when they ate the eggs. This was the usual tactic of a monarch. Rub first and then use force. After a while, the four of them finished drinking. At this moment, Li Shimin waved his hand again. The palace maids held up a large jade plate. The plate was covered with a red cloth again, looking very mysterious. Li Shimin asked, "My dear officials, how does this soup taste?" They ate it very confusedly. So they ate very slowly. The taste of this thing was indeed delicious. It had the freshness of fish and crab, the texture of cattle and sheep, and even the texture of frogs. But even if they ate it slowly, they still couldn't taste what it was. While drinking, they also pondered about the emperor's expression. They saw that the emperor's expression was strange, but they really couldn't figure out what this thing was. At this moment, when the palace maids came up with the jade plate and the emperor asked again, they finally spoke. "Your Majesty, this thing is really something that I haven't eaten in all these years. Could it be the seafood that Jianghu's tribute? Or a treasure from the western region?" When Li Shimin heard this, he laughed and said, "How is this Jianghu or something from the western regions? This thing is originally from the Tang dynasty." Well, everyone was speechless. Looking at the clean bowl, the crowd was unable to figure out how exactly this thing was made. Li Shimin said lightly, "Let's talk about the main effect of this thing first. I know that over the years, you have worked hard for the Tang dynasty. In the early years, you even fought all over the country for the establishment of the Tang dynasty. Needless to say, your bodies are a little weak. And these days, I'm also worried when I see your white hair." Li Shimin said what was in his heart, but Wei Zhang and others choked. They hurriedly knelt on the ground with a plop. "Your Majesty. This is what I should do. Your Majesty, you don't have to do this. Forget it, forget it. When people get old, they like to sigh." Li Shimin waved his hand and motioned for everyone to get up. Then he continued, "Zhang-sun, don't you always feel pain in your knees? And your body is weak. And Prime Minister Wei, if you don't have money, just tell me. Don't be so poor all day. People who don't know better will think that I'm deliberately embezzling. Look at your court robe. It's torn. Get a new one." Li Shimin's words made everyone even more confused. They were talking about locusts. Why did the emperor suddenly change the topic? However, the emperor did not say anything. Everyone could only suppress their doubts and wait for the emperor to speak. Li Shimin sighed with emotion and said, "The thing you drank just now is called bone-strengthening powder. Brother Zhang Feng said that this thing can not only strengthen your physique, but this bowl is equivalent to the nutrition of a bowl of meat soup. I don't know anything about nutrition, but I drank a bowl. I think Brother Zhang Feng won't trick me, so I'll let you have a taste. If you think it's delicious, I'll reward you handsomely." Everyone trembled with excitement when they heard that. "Your Majesty, you don't have to do this." Seeing that he had achieved his goal, Li Shimin stood up with a smile and helped everyone up. He pretended to warn them, "Although this is good stuff, I have to warn you. I heard that it's very effective in strengthening your sex drive. You all work hard for the court, so I also hope that your children can flourish. So, you all must control yourself. Chapter 349. What did he mean? Aphrodisiac? What did Brother Zhang Feng do? They couldn't help but think of the locust eggs that Zhang Feng got before. That thing seemed to have the effect of aphrodisiac and kidney strengthening. Could it be? But when they thought about it carefully, the locust eggs had already turned into grasshoppers. That was impossible. They couldn't help but feel more confused, but they still thanked Li Shimin profusely for his reward. Li Shimin didn't say anything more, but said directly, "Actually, you've all seen this thing before." While speaking, Li Shimin personally lifted the white jade plate placed in the middle of them, revealing what was inside. At the same time, a group of palace maids seemed to have been prepared. Several palace maids stood beside them, holding a copper basin in their hands, waiting quietly. But when they saw what was in the plate, their faces suddenly changed. Locusts, are these locusts? I should have thought of it earlier. What we just drank, is, wretch. Wretch. Wah. Now everyone understood in an instant. They couldn't help but turn pale as paper and vomit loudly. Finally, they knew why these palace maids were holding the jade plate, why the emperor kept saying that, and why they couldn't help but think of the locust eggs when the emperor mentioned aphrodisiac. Damn it, it's locusts. After everyone finished vomiting, Li Shimin sat beside them, took out a few deep-fried golden locusts from the jade plate, and threw them into his mouth. He even chewed with relish, making crunching sounds. Everyone seriously suspected that the emperor was punishing them, but they didn't dare to say it. Li Shimin looked at them with some disdain. You ate the locust eggs as if they were treasures, but I can eat them, but you can't eat them? Li Shimin pretended to be angry. Instantly, the four people felt like they were facing a disaster. They hurriedly stood up and said, "Your subjects dare not." Li Shimin then waved his hand and said, Okay, don't be like that. You've all heard the effects of this thing. Go back and try it first. I've already prepared 3 caddies of locust powder for each of you. No, it's now called bone-strengthening powder, and 3 caddies of fried locust. Tonight, you'll know whether I'm telling the truth or not. Furthermore, this is also my 3rd plan. Li Shimin put away his smile and said solemnly, Now you all know that everyone thinks that this is a pest, a punishment from the heavens. Not only that, but the financial system of the newly established cooperative is also showing signs of collapse. The people have lost their way to make money and have no food. How can they not panic? This guy. You can't let him be idle. Once he's idle, he'll amplify the fear in his heart. Think of a way to earn money from the locust eggs. Even the locust eggs can be used. Why can't I turn these locusts into treasures? Li Shimin himself didn't realize that after being with Zhang Feng for so long, he actually regarded himself as a businessman. But thinking about it carefully, wasn't this what the Tang dynasty needed now? He wanted to take control of the economy. He wanted this country, which was in ruins, to be able to recover its economy in a short period of time. He wanted it to be strong again. This was also the meaning of the Wei River Alliance. But now? Heaven didn't do as he wished. He originally thought that this locust plague was managed before, and Zhang Feng kept saying that it was to prevent next year's locust plague. But he forgot one essential thing. That was, without today's reserves, where would next year's locust plague come from? This year's locust eggs were almost all dug out. Where would this locust plague come from? But now he understood. Zhang Feng had been planning this locust plague since early in the morning. From the beginning of targeting Tubo to now, all the plans, including the food, were basically to eliminate the locust plague from the root. Locusts could fly. Although the Tang dynasty didn't have locust eggs, Tubo did. He ignored this fundamental problem. He only saw that the locust plague of the Tang dynasty was gone. But now? Reality gave Li Shimin a hard slap. This slap not only woke Li Shimin up, but also made him understand a truth. If he wanted to control the locust plague, he had to start from the root. Thinking of this, Li Shimin put his hands behind his back, looked at the flying locusts outside the window, and said faintly, although I didn't receive the memorial, I know that Guanlong will definitely not let go of this opportunity to create public opinion. So, I think we should start from the root of the bad habits of the people. Only by letting everyone know that the locust plague isn't the so-called natural disaster, but a good gift from God to the Tang dynasty can we solve this problem perfectly from the root. As for this bone-strengthening powder and this delicacy, I have decided that tomorrow morning, I will invite everyone to try these two delicacies. I don't believe that under the allure of these two things, who can resist their allure? Chapter 350. Li Shimin's words were sonorous and forceful. Wei Zheng and the others finally understood Li Shimin's purpose. They hurriedly knelt on the ground and shouted, "Your Majesty is wise." Forget it, forget it. It would be great if you were wise. Li Shimin shook his head. It's just a business deal. It's to let the people of the world forget this disaster in such a time of crisis, and let this disaster, these locusts all over the sky, become copper coins in the people's pockets. I'm satisfied. Reporting. However, at this moment, little Gizi hurried in. But seeing that Wei Zheng and the others were present, he hesitated. Li Shimin waved his robe and said, "It's fine." "Say it." "Yes. Your Majesty, Tubo's envoy urgently requests an audience with you. He will arrive in Chang'an tomorrow morning." "What? So soon? Didn't he just go back?" "This is it for?" Wei Zheng and the others could not help but focus on the plate of locusts on the table. Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Pass down the order. Honglu Temple officials are to receive the envoy according to etiquette." "Yes, Your Majesty." Little Gizi hurried away. Li Shimin smiled. "Dear ministers, the god of wealth of the Tang dynasty is here." "Your Majesty, you mean?" Zhang Sun Wuji heard this and could not help but ask. Li Shimin waved his hand and dismissed all the palace maids and guards at the door. Then he sat in the middle of the four and asked them to eat the locusts. He said, "Zhang Sun, how did the matter of the retired emperor's birthday last time go?" Replying to Your Majesty, Tubo's envoy said that he wanted to find a way to deal with the drought. After many twists and turns, yesterday, Tubo's grain had already arrived in Chang'an and Long Yudao's vaults. This subject has also delivered the water wheel to Tubo. This subject has calculated that this is basically all of Tubo's food reserves for this year. Although there is still a surplus, this subject believes that they will not be able to survive past the end of the year after encountering such a locust plague. All right. Well done. Li Shimin slapped his thigh. Then he said, "The plan has already begun. Now think about it. When Brother Zhang Feng made this plan, what did he say?" When everyone heard this, they thought about it carefully and could not help but be aghast. It turned out that the Zhang Feng brothers had already calculated all of this in the morning. First, they used the water wheel blueprint to deal with the drought in exchange for Tubo's fatal attraction. Then, they took advantage of the Tubo people's desire and public opinion on this matter and had no choice but to sign a contract with the Tang dynasty again in exchange for the technology. But now, the locusts finally broke out. This time, the account book that Tubo's brother made to the Tang dynasty was raised again. What was this? This was Brother Zhang Feng tying Tubo firmly to the Tang dynasty's waist and working for the Tang dynasty for free. This, at that time, although everyone was excited when they heard it, they more or less did not take it seriously. But now? If Tubo really came for the plague of locusts, then, at this time, everyone only felt the horror of Zhang Feng. Every time he made a targeted suggestion, he could make a country a plaything of the Tang dynasty in his hands. How terrifying! This was what it meant to destroy the world with a smile. This was even more terrifying than killing Tubo with real swords and spears. Your Majesty, this Brother Zhang Feng. Is he really a god? Wei Zheng took a deep breath. He asked in horror. Li Shimin smiled bitterly. I also want Brother Zhang Feng to be a god, but the truth is the truth. He is just a mortal. Everyone was silent. Everyone thought of Zhang Feng's plan to deal with the Tuyuhun and the Turks again, and they could not help but have goosebumps. This was simply too terrifying. Fortunately, brother Zhang Feng was from the Tang dynasty. If he was from Tubo or another country, then, right. Li Shimon's expression suddenly changed. He asked, immediately send a message to Qing Yaojin and ask him whether the Turks were affected by this plague of locusts. Your Majesty, I was just about to report this. Wei Zhang's expression was grave, but his body was trembling. His face was a little red. Your Majesty, this morning, I received a report from the Secretarial Bureau. It said that Yuzhou, Yi, Ting, and Shuzi sent a secret report that a large number of locusts had entered the Tang dynasty from the Turks. Even the situation in Yuzhou has become more serious. If we combine this with this, I think that the locusts must have crossed the Longyu Road from the Tuyuhun and entered the Turks. Then, from Yuzhou, they entered the Tang dynasty. So, the Turks must have suffered a devastating plague of locusts. Good. Li Shimin heard this and also excitedly slammed the table. This is the most exciting news I have received in recent days. Pass down the order. Quickly find out all the information about the Turks. I want to see how Tuli and Shili can escape from my control. Also, have people keep an eye on the people from Guanlong, especially on the border. If they are found to have business dealings with the Turks, Tubo, and the others, then, as he spoke, Li Shimon's eyes flashed with killing intent. The four hurriedly got up. We understand. Reporting. At this moment, little Gizi entered the imperial study again. As soon as he entered, little Gizi hurriedly knelt on the ground and said, Your Majesty, the envoy from Tuyuhun is also here. Chapter 351. Locusts. The locusts all over the sky made it impossible for people to go out. At this time, in Chang'an City, in addition to the locusts all over the sky, there were only a few chickens and ducks left. They swaggered on the street, and from time to time, they would lower their heads to pick up the locusts on the ground and take a few bites. Then, they would shake their bright feathers and walk slowly on the street again. There were even pigs, cows, and sheep tied up in the alley, wagging their tails and humming as they ate the locusts. Obviously, the locusts were delicious. The pigs couldn't help wagging their tails and smacking their lips. There was also a pile of saliva flowing down from the corners of their mouths to the ground. Although no one had fed them for a long time, the pigs, cows, and sheep all had big bellies. This was the current scene in Chang'an City. Some people who went out were also walking in a hurry with their heads lowered. Many patrolling soldiers had burned the locusts. Even though the market was open now, no one went to the market. Except for the patrolling soldiers who were cursing the locusts with their necks locked, few people could be seen alive. It was like a dead zone. However, in Huitongfang, today, unexpectedly, everyone could smell a strange unpleasant smell in the house. Everyone frowned and sniffed, but no one dared to go out to have a look. Because of this thing. Perhaps it was caused by the natural disaster. Whose house do you think he burned down? But it didn't seem like it. Looking out through the crack of the door, there were only locusts. And this unpleasant smell came from Zhang Feng's tavern. At this time, Zhang Feng was squatting in the backyard of the tavern. Piles of mugwort, musk, and other things were burning around the walls of the courtyard. When all the locusts flew over the courtyard, they didn't even have the chance to show off their might before falling to the ground as if they were drunk. Then, they jumped a few times on the ground and stopped moving. In the middle of the courtyard, Zhang Feng was squatting on the ground, fanning himself with a palm leaf fan. Waves of fishy stench accompanied by rolling black smoke slowly spiraled in the air before being scattered by the locusts. Although Zhang Feng was sweating all over at this moment, his face was filled with excitement as he looked at the red-hot stove. Soon, as long as the rubber is successfully refined, I only need to tinker with a sand model to make a tire. Then, I can, Feng Zi, open the door. Zhang Feng was fantasizing about riding a tricycle or a bicycle to show off in front of Chen Tinyu, Lao Li, and the others. Old He's urgent question pulled him back to reality. Zhang Feng hurriedly dealt with the things that were used to refine rubber. Then, he hurried out and opened the door for Uncle Ho. As soon as the door was opened, Old Ho was carrying a huge gunny sack and panting heavily. His gunny sack and his body were densely covered with locusts. "What are you doing? Why did you take so long to open the door?" Old Ho muttered as he took the opportunity to unload the big sack on his shoulder into the backyard. He then looked at the strange thing and asked, "What is it?" Zhang Feng shrugged. "I can't go out, can I? I'm tinkering with something fun." "Something fun?" Old Ho shook his head. "Use this bag of soft sand sparingly. It wasn't easy for me to get it for you from outside the city." "Okay." Zhang Feng rubbed his hands excitedly. This time, he finally had the mold to make a tire. He gestured for Old Ho to go to the front hall. Zhang Feng took the opportunity to fish out a few bottles of fruits that were frozen at the bottom of the water tank before going to the front hall. There were no tools to freeze fruits in ancient times. Even if there were, Zhang Feng didn't have the time to do it now. All fruits and the like, if he wanted to freeze them, he would have to either sink them to the bottom of a well or put them under a large water tank. He quickly made 3 dishes from the kitchen. Old Ho was already drinking by himself. "Feng Zi, don't go anywhere during this period of time. I just went out and heard from the guards at the city gate that yesterday afternoon and night, when the city gate was about to be closed, the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhun came again." "Oh? Again? What are they doing here?" Zhang Feng took the opportunity to ask. Old He drank his wine and ate his dishes. Then, he said, "Who knows? I think it's related to this disaster." "You didn't hear it. The envoys that came this time are called poor. They didn't even have a decent gift." When Zhang Feng heard this, a subtle smile flashed across his eyes. "They're finally here? Looks like I guessed right again. Their plague of locusts has reached an uncontrollable stage." Sigh. "This is money. Sometimes, you have to earn it even if you don't want to." Zhang Feng shook his head and said, "Then why can't I go out? Isn't it because you like to cause trouble too much? This time, I heard that Tubo wants to form an alliance with the Tang dynasty. It's very likely that His Majesty will invite Jingshu from Yen Lai restaurant to play music. You should think twice. If His Majesty finds out about you and Jingshu at this time, if he gets angry, you..." When Zhang Feng heard this, although his expression turned ugly, he still shrugged and said, "I won't. Don't worry." Chapter 352. Political Announcement Hall. It wasn't time for court yet, but there were already palace maids and eunuchs in the political announcement hall using mugwort, sulfur, and other things to smoke the locusts in the room. Even the Honglu Temple was using this method on the way from the Vermilion Bird Bridge to the political announcement hall. And this method, which the emperor had gotten from an unknown source, was actually able to make all the locusts in the imperial city disappear overnight. Now, the glazed tiles of the imperial city, the white marble floor, and the lake in the imperial garden were densely covered with the corpses of the locusts. And the emperor actually asked them to pack up these disgusting insects. This was what puzzled them the most. But this was the emperor's order, and they didn't dare to disobey. They could only obediently carry it out. The bell rang at 5:00. Finally, after everyone had sorted out the locusts' corpses, it came late. Dong, dong, dong. With the sound of the bell, a group of purple, red, and green-robed officials lined up with white jade tablets in their hands and entered the locusts. But today, everyone was shocked. First of all, the locusts that filled the sky could not be seen the moment they stepped into the imperial city. Even the deeper they went into the imperial palace, the more they couldn't see a fly or a mosquito. Strange. This didn't make sense. Everyone turned to look at the city gate behind them. In the sky outside the city gate, there were still dense locusts baring their fangs and brandishing their claws. But what was going on? The locusts didn't dare to enter the imperial city? Was it a favor from the heavens? Or, everyone entered the political announcement hall in surprise. Once they entered the political announcement hall, they smelled a burst of incense. This smell was very strange. It had the fragrance of flowers, but there was also a faint musk and the smell of mugwort. This made everyone even more puzzled. But just as everyone looked around in confusion, trying to find a locust in the corner of the door, Xiao Gizi's voice sounded from behind the door. The emperor has arrived. Kneel. Everyone hurriedly stopped talking and hurriedly bowed. This subject respectfully welcomes the emperor. No need for formalities. With the crown on his head, Li Shimin walked up the stairway to heaven with a majestic gait. He waved his hand and said, "Sit." But before everyone could sit down, someone hurriedly stepped forward and said, "Your Majesty, this subject has something to report." Li Shimin glanced at the newcomer. He was a member of the Shandong landowning class. Li Shimin waved his hand. "Speak." "Reporting to your Majesty, I investigated in Chang and city yesterday and found that all the people there were in a state of panic and discontent. It seemed that your Majesty had done something to provoke the wrath of the heavens and the resentment of the people, so the heavens decided to punish you, bastard. Lord Sun, you actually dare to openly shout in the royal court. Is this what a subject should do?" In an instant, Zhang Sun Wuji raised his sleeve and scolded. "Your Majesty, this person actually dared to humiliate your Majesty in court. This is a capital offense." "Lord Zhang Sun." Lord Sun stood up straight. Seeing that the emperor did not speak, he coldly looked at Zhang Sun Wuji and said, "Go and ask around. Also, go and check the documents of the Ministry of Justice. Look, in all the dynasties, when have locusts been able to wreak havoc in the imperial city? Go and ask around. This is something that I and many people present here heard with our own ears. I'm just stating the facts. Are people not allowed to speak the truth in the royal court?" "Oh." Li Shimin sneered and waved his hand to stop Zhang Sun Wuji. He said, "Then why haven't I seen a single locust in this vast imperial palace? Why did I hear that the locusts were a treasure given to the Tang dynasty by the heavens?" Hearing this, all the ministers were shocked. "That's right. In the imperial city today, let alone a locust, I didn't even see a fly. Is this really, Lord Go? You saw it clearly during yesterday's morning court session. Let's not talk about anything else, even the political announcement hall was filled with locusts. Tell me, what is this? Then, where are the locusts now? They must have used some method to disperse the locusts. Good. Come on. Why don't you drive away a locust for me, Qing Yao Jin? How big is the imperial city? Who has the ability to drive away all the locusts in the imperial palace overnight? Is it an immortal?" The more Qing Yao Jin spoke, the angrier he became. With his hands on his waist, he pointed at the group of civil officials and roared, "What the F***ck are you talking about? I think you just don't want to see His Majesty live a good life, right?" Hearing this, all the generals began to jeer. F***ck, these sons of B***cheese only think about making money and getting promoted all day long. Once something happens, they splash dirty water on His Majesty. Are you still the ministers of the Tang dynasty? In my opinion, these locusts must have been stirred up by this group of civil officials. And the rumors in Chang and city were definitely made up by this group of B***stards. Otherwise, who the F***ck would do such a thing to end their family line? You're slandering us. How dare you? Old man studied the way of Confucius and Mencius. How could he do such a dirty thing? Chapter 353. The civil officials were anxious. They could no longer care about their usual manners. Their faces were red as they quarreled with the generals in the court. From time to time, some civil officials could not win against the generals. They would kneel on the ground angrily and beg the emperor to punish them. At the same time, they would scold the generals for insulting them. However, Li Shimin did not do anything. Instead, he looked on with a smile. This was a scheme that he had planned. He had long wanted to teach this group of civil officials a lesson. They always carried the teachings of Confucius and Mencius, but what did they do? When something happened, they did not say anything. Once something happened, it would be Li Shimin's fault. Fine, can't you quarrel? I'll let you quarrel to your heart's content today. If you don't quarrel enough, no one is allowed to leave the court. At this time, the civil officials were anxious when they saw that Li Shimin did not care about anything. Who were they? They were Confucian scholars who practiced the teachings of Confucius and Mencius. What kind of people were these soldiers? Who gave them the right to question the teachings of Confucius and Mencius? Lord Sun of the Guanglu Temple pointed at Sheng Yaojin and shouted with trembling lips, "Brute! You brute, what else can you do besides throwing a few punches?" A few days ago, this old man heard that outside the city, you used the emperor's name to detain the rebels. You disregarded the safety of the people and forcibly arrested them. Moreover, you did it in front of everyone. Don't you agree? Yes. Sheng Yaojin clenched his fists so tightly that his knuckles cracked. This group of rebels insulted the emperor in public and even wanted to assassinate the crown prince. Lord Zhangsun, according to the laws of the Tang dynasty, what should be the punishment for such a person? Zhangsun Wuji glanced at Sheng Yaojin and said calmly, "You insulted the emperor in public and attempted to assassinate the crown prince. 9 generations of your family will be executed." Zhangsun Wuji. How come this old man doesn't find you pleasing to the eye? When did you wear the same pants as that boorish fellow Sheng Yaojin? As the Minister of Justice, you actually, Zhangsun Wuji also gave up. What the F***ck, you can scold me if you want to, but why the F***ck do you have to drag me into this? Sun Dahai, how dare you question the laws of the Ministry of Justice? Do you want me to ask His Majesty to let you copy the laws of the Tang dynasty 100 times? You what? Don't tell me that you, Minister of Guanglu Temple, haven't even read the laws of the Tang dynasty? Then aren't you neglecting your duties as the Minister of Guanglu Temple? Zhangsun Wuji took the opportunity to ask. Sun Dahai was speechless. However, at this moment, the people from the Imperial Astronomer jumped out again. Lord Zhangsun, I have observed the heavenly phenomena in this matter, and it is actually Mars guarding my heart. You, old liar, you're using Antares guarding heart again, aren't you? I, old Sheng, still remember the last time, before the retired emperor's birthday, you said that Yinghua was guarding the heart. What happened to the trade route that was sabotaged by Guanlong? Did Mars come up with this again when it saw that Chang and city couldn't be messed up? Then according to what you said, are all the stars in the sky what you call Mars guarding the heart? You. Sheng Yaojin, I have no quarrel with the ox, get out of here. Don't use Antares guarding heart to swindle people. If you dare to use this again, do you believe that Lao Tzu won't beat you up in court? Vulgar. Vulgar. Your Majesty, please say something. We are sincere. Now, everyone in Chang and city is indeed spreading this rumor. Moreover, the locusts are also true. According to what Sheng Yaojin said, the locusts outside the city were all fabricated by us? Lord Wei. Come out and be the judge. Seeing that the emperor was still ignoring him, that person hurriedly asked Wei Zheng. Wei Zheng glanced indifferently at all the officials who were kneeling on the ground and begging him to come out. He sighed faintly and said, "Just now, the emperor said that this is not a punishment from heaven. This is a blessing from heaven. It is an auspicious sign that heaven has bestowed upon the Tang dynasty. Don't you understand?" When the civil officials heard this, they instantly held their breaths. An auspicious sign from heaven? What was going on? Even Prime Minister Wei. I don't know who the Emperor and Prime Minister Wei have listened to mislead the public, but these locusts have been the bane of heaven since ancient times. How can this be an auspicious sign? not an auspicious sign. Qing Yaojin sneered and said, Son Dahai, I remember that until now, you still have a lot of locusts' eggs stored in your house. Do you dare to say that you haven't eaten a gene of them every day? You. Qing Yaojin. How can that thing compare to locusts? That is a great tonic that the emperor has bestowed upon this humble official. Moreover, the emperor has been eating it. How can something like locusts compare to it? Ha ha. Ha 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 ha. Qing Yaojin and Zhangsun Wuji finally couldn't help but laugh out loud. Sun Dahai, old man, I don't know if you've overdone it or if your brain is really not enough. Let me ask you, what are locusts' eggs? What are locusts? These locusts' eggs are, of course, at this point, Sun Dahai's voice suddenly stopped abruptly. Even in the political announcement hall, all the civil officials who were arguing with the military generals with red faces came to an abrupt stop. What were locusts? What were locusts' eggs? This, Li Shimin also said faintly, are you all done arguing? Chapter 354. Li Shimin really didn't want to pay attention to these people. But the current situation was already enough. If they continued to cause trouble, they would lose control of the situation. This was something he didn't want to see. Li Shimin calmly glanced at the crowd and leaned back on the soft marten leather throne. We have been planning this for months. You have all seen the benefits of the locust eggs at that time, right? We have a record of your purchases and your private hoarding of the locust eggs here. Li Shimin knocked on a register on the table. This time, all the civil officials couldn't help but pale. They didn't know what the emperor wanted to do. Li Shimin waited for a while before continuing. We feel that this thing is not bad. It's good stuff, so we share it with you all so that you can get benefits and strengthen your bodies. But, we have prepared another thing today. Li Shimin calmly waved his hand. His sister-in-law looked at the crowd with disdain and shouted, Come, serve breakfast. A moment later, 2 rows of palace maids carrying exquisite white jade plates with fist-sized jade bowls on them entered the political announcement hall unhurriedly. Everyone immediately stepped aside to make a path. Li Shimin waved his hand, and everyone sat on their prayer mats. Smelling the tempting fragrance in the air, everyone was a bit confused. On the other hand, Qing Yaojin impatiently looked at the bowls, drooling. He didn't make it for dinner last night, but he learned about the wonders of this thing from Zhangsun and the others bragging. The palace maids first placed the first bowl in front of Li Shimin, and then placed a bowl of light yellow paste for the officials according to their official ranks. Even little Gizi was rewarded with a bowl by Li Shimin. He excitedly held the jade bowl and trembled all over. We know that you are all wondering why we would invite you all to a banquet at this time, and it's just a bowl of paste. This bowl of paste has a great background. When everyone heard this, even the impatient Qing Yaojin hurriedly put away his greedy look and carefully listened to the emperor's next words. Li Shimin held the bowl and stirred the paste with a spoon. Then, he gently scooped up a spoonful and put it into his mouth, savoring it carefully. After a while, Li Shimin opened his eyes in enjoyment. This time, the ministers were even more confused. In the past few days, I have received the grace of the heavens to obtain this treasure. This is bone-strengthening powder. What? Bone-strengthening powder? What the hell? Everyone was astonished. However, Li Shimin stood up. Holding the bowl, he ate as he walked down the stairs and said, This thing was developed by one of my nobles. I know that many of you have been working hard for the Tang dynasty. Many of you have inconveniences in your legs, and some of you even feel unbearable pain in your knees, waist, and legs in the middle of the night, especially those soldiers who have opened up the country for the Tang dynasty. The eyes of all the generals turned red when they heard this. His Majesty hasn't forgotten us. We are willing to go through water and tread on fire for the Tang dynasty and die 1,000 times without hesitation. The generals raised their bowls excitedly and shouted in unison. They roared. Li Shimin waved his hand indifferently, walked into the middle of the ministers, and sat cross-legged on the ground. Everyone was shocked and hurriedly followed the emperor's example and sat cross-legged on the ground. Only then did Li Shimin say, "It's been a long time since I've sat so close to you. The effect of this bone-strengthening powder is to strengthen the bones. I heard that a small bowl of this thing is equivalent to eating a caddy of meat or drinking a large bowl of mutton soup. But the price is only 1/10,000th of the mutton soup. It's not even close." Everyone looked at the yellow thing in the bowl, which was emitting a tempting fragrance, in horror. Is it really so magical? However, when they saw that the emperor had eaten half a bowl, how could they not believe it? Li Shimin saw that everyone was staring at the bowl but not eating, so he waved his hand and said, "Eat. Eat a little with me." After that, the ministers thanked him in unison, held the bowl, and ate while choking. Li Shimin said while eating, "This small bowl is less than a copper coin. Do you believe it? WH. What? How? How is this possible?" Everyone was shocked. Before they ate, they didn't feel anything. But now, although they only ate a little, how could they forget the taste? There was the taste of pepper and salt, but it couldn't hide the fresh taste. What is this? What is it? Li Shimin waved his hand, indicating that everyone should eat quickly. Li Shimin had already finished the last little bit of the bowl, and carefully put the last bit of the bowl into his mouth with a spoon. Li Shimin then put down the bowl reluctantly. If you can have 2 small bowls of this every day, as long as you persist for a year, I believe that each of you will be much stronger. Not only can this thing nourish the kidneys, it can also strengthen the body. After the court, I will reward each of you with a caddy of this thing. In less than 3 days, you will definitely feel the magic of this thing." What? 3 caddies? 3 caddies per person? Everyone was stunned. But everyone hurriedly put down the bowl, kneeled on the ground and shouted, "Long live the emperor!" When Li Shimin heard this, only then did he smile. He had achieved his goal. Chapter 355. Actually, Li Shimin originally did not want to do this. But the longer he stayed with Zhang Feng, the more he could clearly feel the benefits of running a country through business. Everyone in the imperial court had a large amount of fiefdom. Everyone had their own business circle. From the amount of money that the cooperative had made last time, it could be seen that each and every one of them was filthy rich. Now, many Confucian officials in the imperial court were against him. Why was that? It was all for money. He had learned his lesson. From Zhang Feng, he understood a principle. Often, when using a soft knife to kill people, it was more terrifying than using a knife to chop off people's heads or even kill their entire family. This was the result of Li Shimin's discussion with Empress Jiangsun last night. That was to fatten these guys up first. You have to pull them onto the boat and let them have a goal. Only then would they be willing to work hard for you. Just like the method that Zhang Feng formulated to deal with Tubo. If you want to kill a wolf, you have to at least fatten it up. When it can't brandish its claws, the effect of killing it is always 100 times better than killing it when it is hungry. At that time, even a 10-year-old child can kill it with a knife. This was the business model. It was a way of running a country that Li Shimin learned from Zhang Feng. Thinking of this, Li Shimin suppressed the excitement in his heart. He waved his hand and said, "My beloved officials, I know that you all want to know what this is, right? Your Majesty, what is this thing? Why is it so cheap? Is it really effective? This old official's knees hurt all year round. I have eaten all kinds of tonics, but it still doesn't get better. This." Li Shimin smiled and patted Sun Dehai's shoulder. "My beloved official, I promise you that if you continue to take the bone-strengthening powder, in less than a year, your legs will hurt. It will get better. Moreover, I have a secret that all of you must keep a secret for me." When everyone heard this, they couldn't wait to stick their ears to Li Shimin's mouth. "You can only eat 2 big bowls of this thing a day. If you eat more, I'm worried that it will harm your health." "Injured? Ahem. What the emperor meant was that this thing could strengthen the yang qi. The old man tried it last night, and it was very effective. Fang Xianling coughed and said in a low voice. But his voice was soft. However, everyone was terrified when they heard it. Which one of them didn't have 3 wives and 4 concubines? However, as they grew older, everyone began to feel powerless. Ever since they came into contact with the locust eggs, everyone felt as if they had found a treasure. The locust's eggs, which were originally worth a few copper coins per caddy, were all eaten up. But the effect, there was nothing to say. But now, this thing was actually an aphrodisiac? Everyone's eyes turned red. Staring at the remaining food in the bowl, everyone began to wolf it down. Some people even covered the bowl with their sleeves and licked it with their tongues. Li Shimin didn't stop them. He just looked at everyone with a smile. Qing Yaojin was about to follow suit, but Fang Xianling quietly nudged him in the arm. Only then did he put down the bowl embarrassedly. After everyone finished eating, Li Shimin said, "This bone-strengthening powder not only has the effect of strengthening the yang qi and the kidney, but also contains all the effects of the locust eggs. If you take it for a long time, although it can't make you young again, it can make your body stronger. Not only that, it can also make you a little contribution to the population of the Tang dynasty. I am also willing to take this thing out and make a fortune with my beloved subjects." Make a fortune. The emperor was actually willing to offer such a magical and precious thing? Is this really a treasure given to us by the heavens? Everyone was even more excited and thanked him profusely. At this time, Li Shimin stood up with the help of Wei Zheng and Qing Yaojin. After exchanging greetings with the officials again, Li Shimin said, "I know that you all want to know what this thing is, right? Your Majesty, what is it?" Li Shimin shook his head lightly. "Allow me to keep you in suspense. Go back and try it. After 3 days, when you see the effect, I will naturally announce it in the morning court. And I dare to guarantee that this thing, as long as you all work together with me, in less than 3 months, your mansions will be filled with money." The officials were envious. Previously, the emperor knew that they all had properties, but he didn't care. But now? The emperor was actually willing to take out such a sacred thing and share it with everyone. What was this? This was a wise emperor of a generation. Among them, there were some people who always felt that the emperor was not pleasing to the eye. At this time, when they looked at Li Shimin, there was actually a sense of shame in their eyes. Guan Long, the nobles of Shandong, and even the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs couldn't understand. Everyone looked at the emperor in confusion. They didn't know what Li Shimin was doing. Qing Yaojin was also anxious. If it weren't for Wei Zheng and Fang Xianling holding him back, he would have rushed up and asked the emperor what he was doing. But at this time, he heard a sentence from Zhang Sun Wuji's speech. "After the court, the emperor invites you in." Chapter 356. The meeting was dismissed. Amidst everyone's excitement, and doubt, the tide receded. But this time, Li Shimin felt different from before. Why? This was because he could actually hear even more loyalty from the crowds chanting. It was a subtle feeling. However, Li Shimin knew that his intuition was not wrong. Wasn't that person trying to hide his assets? Was he afraid that the emperor would know? But now? Not only did the emperor not blame him, but he would also share the way to make money with everyone? What was this? If he went against the emperor at this time, it would only be bad for the nobles and their families. The emperor was obviously trying to win people's hearts. This was a good opportunity. The more Li Shimin thought about it, the wider the smile on his face. He could imagine everyone's excitement on the road now. He had already grasped these people's minds. Li Shimin did not return to the imperial study. Instead, he entered the imperial garden. Looking at the withered appearance of the imperial garden, Li Shimin sighed with emotion. Sitting in the pavilion in the middle of the lake, he could even feel that the fish at this time were not as happy as before. Not long after. Wei Zheng, Zhangsun Wuji, Du Ruhui, Fang Xianling, and Xing Yaojin came in a hurry. As soon as they came in, little Gizi motioned for everyone to be quiet. But the sound of feet stepping on dry leaves finally woke Li Shimin up. You're here? Sit down. After everyone sat down, Li Shimin said, Today, there are no monarchs and ministers here, only a few close friends. Little Gizi, sit down too. Thank you for your kindness, Your Majesty. After sitting down, Li Shimin said, Are you very confused about why I did this? Your Majesty, it is indeed so. In this way, won't it help the nobles of Shandong and Guanlong to become more arrogant? Wei Zheng said with a serious expression. No. Li Shimin shook his head. You've also interacted with Brother Zhang Feng quite a bit. Think about it, from the moment Brother Zhang Feng came up with his first water wheel plan, which of his plans hasn't been meticulously planned out, taking into account the Tubo, Tuyuhun, and the Turks? How did he do it? Have you thought about it carefully? The six of them looked at each other in confusion and shook their heads at the same time. Li Shimin looked at the surface of the lake and said, I once wanted to kill all those rotten people in the court, but last night, we suddenly had an epiphany from Brother Zhang Feng's way of doing things and his experience in handling matters. Killing people is just a small matter. Exterminating families is killing, but once you start killing, there will definitely be more voices of opposition in the court. You might even lose everything. But what if it's a soft knife? Have you ever thought about the logic of killing pigs and hunting? The six of them lowered their heads in confusion, and began to carefully appraise it. Li Shimin said again, In fact, don't think of yourselves as you are now. Think of yourselves as you were when you were with Brother Zhang Feng. You are a businessman, and we are businessmen. Take a look at this matter again. Do you want to kill all the merchants who oppose you? Or do you want to use Brother Zhang Feng's means to turn them into your tools to make money? For example, Tubo? Buzz. The six of them couldn't help but feel like a clap of thunder in their minds. At this time, all the puzzles they couldn't figure out turned into clouds and mist. It turned out that the emperor had already calculated everything. This plan, once it was implemented, it would be very difficult. Then the emperor would really treat these people as prey. But, Your Majesty, what about Guanlong? Li Shimin waved his hand and said, You don't have to worry about this. You just need to remember that when a pack of wolves fight for food, there will inevitably be a fight. We just need to do our job as hunters and wait and see. Don't care about anything else. I think the Shandong aristocrats are no threat. As long as they take the bone-strengthening powder back, they will naturally surrender to me. Now, only Guanlong and the people with 5 surnames and 7 hopes are left. Don't you want to sit on the mountain and watch the tigers fight? Everyone was scared. When did the emperor come up with such a ruthless plan? Could it be, this was the masterpiece of Brother Zhang Feng? What do you think of my plan? Li Shimin stood up with his hands behind his back. His clothes fluttered in the breeze. He looked like an immortal. The 6 of them could sit here and be valued by Li Shimin. How could they be fools? At this time, the 6 of them knelt down and shouted excitedly, Your Majesty is wise. On the other side. That is, the Wanshou Palace in the depths of the Imperial Palace. This is the palace that Li Shimin renovated for Li Yuan after the conflict between him and Li Yuan. At this time, Li Yuan was lying on the swing in confusion, looking at the sky as if he was looking for something. But at this time, an old eunuch hurriedly reporting to retired Emperor, Lord Go of the Imperial Astronomer requests an audience. Lord Go? No. Hearing this, Li Yuan waved his hand and asked, Oh right, have you seen the locusts? I was still thinking that I could play with locusts with everyone today. How come the locusts are all gone today? Reporting to retired Emperor, last night, the Emperor ordered the palace maids and the people of the Minister of Internal Affairs to control the locusts. What? The locusts were really controlled? But at this time, a discordant voice interrupted Li Yuan. This humble subject, Go Baoming of the Imperial Astronomer, requests an audience with retired Emperor. Chapter 357. Li Yuan was originally very shocked. This locust plague seemed to be more ferocious than before. He was still worried about how Li Shimin was going to control the locust plague. But this morning, it was controlled? This couldn't help but make Li Yuan even more puzzled. But he was also slightly relieved. He knew best what his son was like. If he could govern the imperial city well, then this method would definitely be used by the whole world. Otherwise, he wouldn't be Li Shimin. However, what the hell was this Go Baoming? Li Yuan glanced slightly at the person kneeling on the ground and said, "You came to the wrong place. If there's anything, go to the emperor." "I don't care. Retired emperor, I beg retired emperor to make a decision. Now, confusion is guarding the heart. The emperor's mind has been blinded by the demon. He actually wants to share a magical thing with the officials. In other words, the emperor wants to do the business of the merchants." "What? What magical thing?" Li Yuan instantly became interested. He sat up and asked. "Answering retired emperor, it's called, retired emperor, the bone-strengthening powder is here. Have a taste." And at this moment, a charming voice that could make people's bones soften instantly made Li Yuan put him down and excitedly held a woman in revealing clothes. "Good, good, good. Beauty, come, come, let me taste what's different about the bone-strengthening powder you made. Retired emperor. You must not eat it. This thing hasn't been appraised by the Imperial Academy of Medicine, and it hasn't been, get lost. The emperor and I have eaten the thing sent by my son. And from last night until now, we have been eating it. It's all right. And presumably, you all have eaten this thing in the imperial court today, right? What do you mean? Why are you disturbing my mood here? Retired emperor." Seeing Li Yuan angry, Go Baoming hurriedly kowtowed like pounding garlic. "Retired emperor, we don't know the raw material of this thing until now. And I heard that the emperor said that the cost of this thing is only 1 copper coin. This humble official has never seen such an item. And now, the emperor actually wants to reward this thing to the officials and let them get rich together. This is against. Get lost. Men, beat him up and throw him out." Li Yuan was angry. But in fact, his heart was slowly becoming heavy. Seeing this, Go Baoming quickly begged for mercy. "Retired emperor, His Majesty's move not only benefited the 5 clans and 7 nobles, but also benefited the Guanlong group. If Guanlong takes advantage of this opportunity to expand, then our Tang dynasty will be in danger." Li Yuan frowned slightly. "Men, beat him to death." "Yes." When the golden-armored guard heard this, he pulled out the Mo sword from his waist and smashed the scabbard heavily on Go Baoming's body. In an instant, countless golden-armored guards did the same and smashed down viciously. And Li Yuan looked at the things in the bowl at this time and also lost his appetite. His face was terrifyingly gloomy. "Eunuch Rome, what do you think His Majesty is doing?" After dismissing all the beauties, palace maids, eunuchs, and even the golden-armored guards, Li Yuan asked an old eunuch beside him in a solemn voice. The old eunuch glanced at the dead body and said, "Retired emperor, you watched His Majesty grow up. To say something rebellious, this servant also watched His Majesty grow up. With His Majesty's temperament, presumably, he will not do things that he is not sure of. But this servant can't see through it. I can't see through it either." Although Li Yuan said that he did not care about the court anymore. But he was basically paying attention to all the big and small things in the court. Especially last night, when Li Shimin offered this bone-strengthening powder, he had already told him the ingredients, which were locusts. Moreover, he tasted the fried salt and pepper locusts with him. That delicious taste. Every time he thought of it, it made Li Yuan salivate. However, he could also imagine the value of such an item. He actually wanted to share such a miraculous item with these people. Not to mention others, this Go Baoming, who were these people? If word of this got out, wouldn't he become the talk of the town? Li Yuan also could not figure it out. He could not see through what Li Shimin was doing. He did not even know what he was planning. Now that the envoys of Tubo and Tuyuhan had arrived, then all of this happened under the enemy's nose. Presumably, it would not be long before this matter would spread to those people's ears. This, not only did it not have a trace of benefit to the Tang dynasty, but it would also put the Tang dynasty in a difficult situation. What was he thinking? Li Yuan looked at the tempting fragrance in the bowl. At this time, he actually felt that it was not fragrant. Deeply sighing, Li Yuan still felt that he should go and see Li Shimin. Otherwise, he would not have confidence in his heart. Go, set the carriage, let's go see His Majesty. Oh right, where is His Majesty now? Reporting to retired Emperor, I heard that he is discussing with Prime Minister Wei and others in the pavilion in the middle of the lake in the Imperial Garden. Good. Since they are all here, then today, I might as well solve this matter all at once. Go. Set the carriage. Yes. Li Yuan made up his mind. Since they were all here, then he might as well make this matter clear in front of them. He believed that if it were not for these guys, His Majesty would definitely not play like this. Or was there really an expert behind Li Shimin? But, who was he? Li Yuan could not help but think of the jars of wine that he had never seen before. You, who are you? Chapter 358. In the Imperial Garden. Li Shimin and Wei Zheng were talking about how to deal with the plague of locusts. While they were talking, they picked up some oily grasshoppers from a big plate on the stone table, threw them into their mouths, and chewed them. Then, they took a sip of wine. That kind of wonderful feeling was self-evident. My dear minister, do you mean that the plague in Tubo is more serious this time? Li Shimin took a sip of wine. His face was as red as a tomato. But after a long silence, he looked at Wei Zheng and asked. Wei Zheng thought for a while, put down the grasshopper that he was about to eat, and nodded. Here's the thing. The news from Liangzhou arrived at your mansion in the middle of the night. It said that all the good merchants in Liangzhou came back from Tubo as if they were fleeing. And I also heard that there was a problem at the Turkic border. All the Turkic people are gathering at the border. Judging from their ragged clothes, they don't seem to be having a good time. So, this means that Brother Zhang Feng's prediction is very accurate. The plague of locusts in the Tang dynasty is caused by Tubo and Tuyuhan? Li Shimin analyzed carefully. Yes. Fang Xianling nodded. He narrowed his eyes and said, that's indeed the case. I also checked the letters from various places. All the places where the plague of locusts broke out are near these places. The other places are basically fine. Then, tomorrow morning, the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhan will have an audience with you. Your Majesty, I want to ask if this matter will be discussed in the court, or if I will go to the Honglu temple in private to hold a banquet and talk about it at the banquet. Zhang Sun Wuji frowned and looked at Li Shimin. Well, Li Shimin stroked the beard on his chin. After thinking for a while, he said, let's wait until after the court tomorrow. I think those officials will use the bone-strengthening powder today, so there will be a decision tomorrow. Isn't it supposed to take 3 days? Qing Yaojin grabbed a handful of locusts and stuffed them into his mouth, then asked vaguely. If that's the case, Your Majesty, why don't we make them suffer for another day? This way, it will be more beneficial to our interests. Moreover, when the time comes, those fellows in the imperial court will definitely finish the things you gave them in 3 days. When that time comes, they will crazily want more of these things. Wei Zheng narrowed his eyes, and a scheming look flashed in his eyes. Aphrodisiac is a fatal attraction for every old thing. Your Majesty, don't ask anything about it for 2 days. Don't talk about it. By the morning of the day after tomorrow, those ministers will definitely not be able to endure it. They will agree to whatever Your Majesty says in terms of benefits. When the time comes, once it is announced, there will be no delay in Your Majesty's plan. As long as someone dares to oppose or question it, there will be people who will go crazy against that person. How could these old fellows not know about the Emperor's plan? This was a big reshuffle, and also a chance to pick a side. In front of huge benefits, all the previous gaps would disappear. They were all old foxes, so who would dare to block the road to wealth? Moreover, it was the road to wealth for all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. However, the money they earned would eventually go into the emperor's pocket, and then turn into pieces of paper and fly back into their pockets. It was not so much making money for them, but for the emperor. Damn it, who would oppose it? Who would dare to oppose it? Good. Li Shimin heard it and said loudly. Then, he raised his wine cup and said, in that case, let's make them suffer for 2 more days. Just like the man who trained the eagle, I will also make them suffer. Everyone, raise your cups, let's drink together. Now, all the plans, including the strategy that Zhang Feng told Li Shimin before and yesterday, were clear about the plague of locusts in Tubo and other countries. Then, they just had to wait for 3 days. After 3 days, what kind of era would the Tang dynasty enter? However, just as they raised their cups, Li Yuan and the old eunuch came in a hurry. They stopped all the people who wanted to report and stood not far from the pavilion in the middle of the lake. Then, they looked at Li Shimin and the others. Li Yuan also heard the conversation just now. Although he did not hear what they were discussing in a low voice, the last sentence made Li Yuan unable to hold back his anger. If this went on, wouldn't the court become a place of good merchants? These traitorous traitors. Li Yuan was angry. The evil spirit all over his body was rising sharply. At this moment, Li Yuan no longer hid behind the tree and strode towards the pavilion in the middle of the lake. At this moment, the old eunuch who followed him also shouted in a sharp voice, "The retired emperor has arrived." When the people who were drinking heard it, they could not help but be shocked. Why did the retired emperor come? But when they turned around, they saw the retired emperor angrily coming with his hands behind his back. The people's eyebrows could not help but jump, and they hurriedly bowed down. Li Shimin was the same. This son greets the retired emperor. Li Yuan did not speak. Instead, he walked into the pavilion in the middle of the lake in anger. Sitting on the stone bench that Li Shimin just sat on, he coldly looked at the people and said indifferently, "Wei Zheng, Zhangsun Wuji, Fang Xianling, Du Ruhui, Qing Yao Jin, do you know your crimes?" Chapter 359. Guilty? What crime? The few of them were confused. Li Shimin was even more confused. But after thinking for a bit, he understood a lot of things. This must be someone who went to complain. Very good. Father, this son doesn't know why father is so angry? Is it? Zhen is living very well. Don't use those things to brush me off. Zhen asks you, this locust plague, how are you going to solve it? Also, I heard that you want to turn the imperial court into a place for merchants, is that right? Don't quibble. Zhen heard your conversation just now. What are you talking about? If you go on like this, won't this imperial court be laughed at? My imperial court of the Tang dynasty has become a place for merchants. What is this? This is a great shame. It turned out that the retired emperor was angry because of this matter. Li Shimin calmed his mind slightly and motioned for the few of them to get up. Then, he sat opposite Li Shimin and said, "Father, this matter is not what you think. Listen to me for the specifics." While talking, Li Shimin leaned close to Li Yuan's ear and started whispering. Following Li Shimin's whisper, Li Yuan's expression sometimes frowned and pondered. Sometimes, it suddenly became clear. Sometimes, it was unusually angry. After a while, Li Yuan finally figured out the cause and effect of the matter. He glanced at the few of them and waved his hand faintly, "You all withdraw first. Zhen has something to say to the emperor." This official obeys the decree. The few of them hurried away. But everyone could see from the emperor and the retired emperor's eyes that it was not appropriate for the retired emperor to pursue this matter. The few of them also relaxed and hurried to carry out the matter that they discussed with the emperor before. But at this time, only Li Yuan and Li Shimin were left in the pavilion in the middle of the lake. The atmosphere was somewhat subtle. Li Yuan looked at the locust on the stone table with interest and said, "You all are in a good mood. Can this kind of thing be eaten? Father, why don't you try it? Although this thing doesn't look good, the taste is still not bad. It's a good thing to go with wine. Is it the kind of wine that you gave Zhen?" Li Yuan smelled the lingering smell of alcohol in the air and asked. Li Shimin didn't say anything. Instead, he waved his hand and had someone bring in another set of bowls, chopsticks, wine set, and locusts. He personally poured a cup for Li Yuan. Only then did Li Yuan leisurely use his hand to pick up a locust. First, he removed all of the locust's legs and tentacles, then he pulled out its wings and stomach. But after looking at it, he picked up a few more locusts and retreated, throwing them into his mouth and slowly chewing. As he chewed, Li Shimin glanced at the locusts doubtfully, then picked up a complete one. Only after Li Shimin personally took a bite did he put it into his mouth. In an instant, the crispness after frying, as well as the freshness and chewiness, made Li Yuan fall in love with this thing. Anyway, he had already eaten the bone-strengthening powder made from locusts, let alone a whole locusts. As for the locust egg, he had been consuming it all this time. Its effects were indeed quite good. While eating and drinking, Li Yuan raised his cup and clinked it with Li Shimin's. "Have you thought it through? Do you want to start a war with Guanlong now?" "Yes. This son has thought it through. Sometimes, raising the butcher's knife high up can't truly kill the enemy. Instead, it will cause one's losses to be even greater. Therefore, this son feels that Guanlong controls the trade route, right? Then this emperor will compete with him in the trade route, and knock him down in the area he is best at. This way, not only will everyone know that this is our Li family's world, and it will also let everyone understand that in this world, there is only one person who has the final say. This son cooperates with those people in the imperial court. This is also a matter of last resort. It is the same as this. That cooperative is the prerequisite for this matter. Putting all the silver into our own pockets, they, in turn, are fighting for the world for our Lao Li family. This kind of matter, everyone will sharpen their heads to drill in. Who dares to retreat? Then, this emperor doesn't need to make a move. There will definitely be someone who will kill them." Li Shimin narrated his plan in detail to Li Yuan. He even narrated the matter of how to deal with the locusts and the bone-strengthening powder to Tubo and the others. Only then did Li Yuan let out a deep sigh. Although this has never happened before, in the current Tang dynasty, everything is recovering. This is indeed needed. Moreover, the plague of locusts has appeared at such a crucial time. If this disaster can really be turned into an opportunity, then this world will really be peaceful. Father is wise. Li Shimin flattered in a timely manner. However, Li Yuan sighed slightly and said, "Wise my ass. This is all your credit. This emperor will not ask about the matters of the imperial court. Today, Go Baoming went to find me, and I killed him. The imperial astronomer has to change to a more reliable person. Oh right, you have to pay attention to the imperial college. During this period of time, my palace eunuchs often meet those people. They seem to be in contact with this person with the surname Go. You have to be careful. Thank you for the reminder, father. This son has noticed the imperial college. They are the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs. For the time being, this son is not prepared to have a conflict with them. Now that this matter of the bone-strengthening powder has appeared, this son wants to let Guanlong and the people of the 5 surnames and 7 Wangs have a dogfight. What do you think?" Li Yuan savored it carefully and then said, "Eunuch Rong, come, help this emperor back to the palace." While speaking, Li Yuan said faintly, "This emperor will no longer ask about this matter. However, when will you get a chef for these locusts?" "This son obeys your majesty." Chapter 360. 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. However, these 3 days were torture for the envoys of Tubo and Tuyuhun, as well as all the civil and military officials in the imperial court. Basically, the gates of Zhangsun Wuji, Qingyao Jin, Fang Xianling, and Du Ruhui were all trampled on. Not for anything else, but just to ask what exactly this bone-strengthening powder was. As for why no one went to Wei Zhang's residence. Only someone with a screw loose would dare to go to Wei Zhang's residence and ask about the bone-strengthening powder? Were you courting death? Who was Wei Zhang? Once he knew that you were inquiring about something that even the emperor was unwilling to talk about, he would definitely send a memorial to the emperor and make you eat fried meat with a stick. These few days, Qingyao Jin and the others no longer looked pale. Instead, their faces were glowing. They ate less meat, and their appetite had also decreased. Usually, a residence would need at least 10 caddies of noodles. But now, after everyone in the residence had eaten the bone-strengthening powder, they only needed 5 caddies of noodles. Even Qingyao Jin, who was known as a big rice bucket, had reduced his appetite from a bowl the size of a wash basin to a bowl the size of a fist. He couldn't even finish a bowl. This shocked the guests. Everyone thought that Qingyao Jin must have gotten more bone-strengthening powder than everyone else. Qingyao Jin was also at his wit's end. He sent Qing Chimo to see the emperor. After getting permission, Qingyao Jin waved his hand. You want the bone-strengthening powder, right? Okay. 100 strings of coins per caddy. But even so, he couldn't stand it anymore. Looking at the copper coins, silver, and gold ingots piled up in a room, he went crazy. He hurriedly entered the palace that night. But he didn't know until he entered the palace. Now that he entered the palace, he realized that things were serious. Other than Wei Zhang, all of their manors had encountered the same situation. Even if the entire family had been mobilized, even the locusts that had been secretly transported from the imperial city had not been enough. Those ministers were more black-hearted than the other. *CK, there were many who asked for hundreds or even hundreds of thousands of dawn. Moreover, they would give you the money first. Regardless of whether you have it or not, they would give you the money first. Now, you have to give it to them even if you don't want to. Looking at the room full of money and the huge amount of orders, they didn't feel happy at all. Instead, they felt even more worried. How could this be good? Even though Qing Chimo, Wei Shuyu, and the others had been secretly collecting locusts these past few days, it was of no use. Hundreds of officials. Almost all of them were here. How could he deal with this? He looked at the people on the Vermilion Bird Bridge. The few of them looked at each other. Isn't this the bone-strengthening powder given by your majesty? But now, everyone was smart and didn't dare to speak out. But this silence didn't last long. It was unknown which unlucky bastard was kicked in the butt, causing him to lie on the ground. The white jade tablet in his hand fell to the ground with a click. Li Shimin looked at it and was happy. Surveillance of the Imperial College. Master Cui, tell me about it. Chapter 363. What could they say? The emperor had already raised his cup. They could only hurriedly get up and drink with the emperor. But in the next moment, their expressions changed. Looking at the little wine left in the cup and then at the jade pot, they couldn't help but show a look of horror. They drank some of this wine every day, and those who could hold their liquor would usually drink a large jar every day. But this wine, it was just a small cup, but it was like swallowing a ball of fire. The scorching temperature went down the throat and then into the stomach. This wine, my God, what wine is this? Is this wine a tribute from Jinla? Isn't it too strong? But this wine is so addictive. Ha ha ha. When Li Shimin heard the cries of alarm among the ministers below, he laughed aloud and said, Gentlemen, what do you think? What do you think of this wine? Of course, this wine was Zhang Feng's, but Li Shimin had learned to be shrewd. And anyone who had been to the tavern a few times would be shrewd enough to know that this wine had the so-called degree. And these wines were ordered by Li Shimin to the tavern last night by Wei Shuyu. 10 jars of low-degree wine and 10 jars of 72-degree wine. Of course, Li Shimin, Wei Zheng, and the others drank the lowest degree wine, but the rest of the people, that would definitely be a 72-proof wine. This was Li Shimin's trap. Li Shimin didn't dare to ask Zhang Feng for the wine. Even if he asked, Zhang Feng wouldn't give it to him. When Li Shimin's voice fell, those old drunkards couldn't sit still. Your Majesty, is this wine a tribute from Zhenla? Impossible, Your Majesty, I think this wine is sweet and spicy. Although it feels like a knife or fire when it goes down the throat, it retains the essence of the grain. Is this wine brewed from wheat? But wheat doesn't exist in the western regions. This is. Stop guessing. Li Shimin waved his hand. He glanced at Zhang Sun Wuji indifferently. Immediately, Zhang Sun Wuji stood up and said, this wine was brewed by an expert from the Great Tang. However, due to the geography and environment of the mountain that the expert resided in, there is not much of this wine, only 10 jars a year. Today, the emperor has reluctantly taken out these 10 jars of wine as a reward for all of you to drink to your heart's content. What are all of you waiting for? Why aren't you thanking him? What? This wine is brewed by an expert? Moreover, there were only 10 jars? In other words, His Majesty wanted to use this fine wine as well. Everyone's eyes couldn't help but burst into bursts of scorching light. Let's not talk about the taste of the locusts. If the emperor could eat them, then the taste would definitely not be that bad. Moreover, he had already eaten the locust's eggs. What was there to be afraid of? However, if everyone didn't think too much and hurriedly knelt on the ground to express their gratitude. Chapter 364. Compared to Li Shimin's joy. Now Zhang Feng could be said to be crazy. In the yard. At this time, the yard was full of shiny black iron parts. If there was a modern person, after seeing these things, he would be shocked. Because each of these parts was a part of a bicycle. And Zhang Feng was squatting on the ground, fiddling with something like a bicycle chain. The chain was not as precise as it was in his previous life. The craftsmen of today did not have the ability to do so, but Zhang Feng had put in a lot of effort to make the gears of the tricycle into a linkage, and the link between the two gears was replaced by a chain like a chain. For this kind of thing, he quarreled with the old blacksmith in the south of Chang and city for a full hour before finally settling this matter. At this time, Zhang Feng was using molten iron to fasten the chain to the gaps one by one. He heated it with fire and then poured molten iron on it. In this way, this thing could be made into a hole. After it solidified, he heated it up and fixed it in one direction with a hammer. In this way, the whole chain was formed. Fengzi, are you in? Fengzi? Just as Zhang Feng was preparing to assemble the tricycle in a hurry, the old scholar's voice suddenly came from outside the door. Zhang Feng had to quickly wet everything and cover him with the prepared linen cloth. Then he hurried to the front hall and opened the door of the tavern. He saw the old scholar wrapped in a headscarf, only a pair of eyes on his head. Zhang Feng was overjoyed when he saw this outfit. I say, old Xiaotsai, did you become a thief? Get out. The old scholar glared at Zhang Feng angrily. After entering the room, he took off all the clothes on his body and looked at Zhang Feng's tavern with curiosity. He asked, why didn't I see a fly when I entered the tavern, let alone a locust? What did you use? Here, that, made with mugwort and realgar beef tendons. Zhang Feng pointed at the corner of the wall. The old scholar couldn't help but feel curious. This thing can drive away locusts? Of course. If you don't believe me, you'll know when the time comes. Take some with you when you leave. I guarantee that you won't see a single locust in your courtyard. Oh right, you're here for? Zhang Feng asked curiously. It's nothing. I just don't have any alcohol to drink. The old elementary scholar didn't put on any pretense and said directly. Hearing this, Zhang Feng didn't waste any time. He took out a jar of good wine from the counter and went to the kitchen to prepare a bowl of bone-strengthening powder and a side dish. He originally wanted to serve the fried locusts, but after thinking about it, he was afraid that the old scholar would immediately die when he saw that thing, so he hesitated for a few seconds. In the end, he gave up on acting cool. If he died, he would be in big trouble. Moreover, when the academy opened, he, the old elementary scholar, would be the main force. In any case, whatever the other party said, he would just do as he was told. After 3 rounds of wine, the old scholar finally realized what was going on. He stood up unsteadily and picked out 2 large jugs of wine from the counter. Fengzi, do you have any more of this? It tastes really good, I'll bring some back to try. Alright, I've already prepared it for you. While speaking, Zhang Feng took out an oiled paper bag containing 3 caddies of wine from the counter. He said, Old scholar, although this stuff is good, you can't eat too much of it. Although it's good for tonics, eating too much of it will also kill you. At most, 2 big bowls a day. Don't eat too much, it's best to eat it with corn, do you hear me? Alright, by the way, you must be on time for the poetry gathering tomorrow night. Alright. Zhang Feng took out a package of mugwort from the corner of the door and stuffed it into the old scholar's arms. Only then did the old scholar stagger away. Zhang Feng rubbed his forehead and then lay down on the recliner, worrying. He could understand everything clearly, but he really wasn't prepared for this blind date and this concubine who appeared out of nowhere. Although he did have a good impression of this Jingshu, they had only met once and spoken twice. Was this love? Not really. At most, it was a gamble. Besides, Jingshu had too many troubles behind her. If he didn't handle it well, he would be in endless trouble at any moment. The best way was to get an official position. At that time, who would dare to oppose him? But Jingshu wasn't a problem. The biggest problem was the marriage of the Zhang family. The old scholar didn't mention it at all, as if he had long forgotten about it. However, he knew that it was still there. And this was the biggest problem. According to the customs of the Tang dynasty, marriage was a troublesome matter. Not only was it cumbersome, but a woman from a rich family, especially one with a little bit of talent, was not easy to fool. If you said that she was stupid or didn't understand these things, that would be fine. But from the letter that Shui brought to him last time, he only saw shrewdness. Moreover, Zhang Feng didn't dare to try the fear of marriage at this time. Everything had to be delayed. Zhang Feng couldn't help but feel that whether it was modern or ancient times, this man. It was too difficult. Chapter 366. In the political announcement hall. Li Shimin was sitting still. It was the same for all the ministers. Everyone's backs were ramrod straight. Even the generals were wearing armor that they hadn't worn for a long time. They were even allowed to bring their weapons to the palace. What kind of occasion was this? This was a time to show off the might of the Tang dynasty. To put it bluntly, it was a time to show off. Li Shimin sat on the dragon throne with a dignified expression. When the Jianghu guards outside the hall signaled the arrival of the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhan, Li Shimin waved his hand and said, "Summon the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhan to the hall. The emperor has decreed that the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhan should be summoned to the hall. The emperor has decreed that the envoys from Tubo and Tuyuhan should be summoned to the emperor." Summon. Following the 3 shouts of the Jianghu guards, 2 people wearing beast-skin skirts with all kinds of beads hanging from their bodies and a string of heaven beads in their hands respectfully entered the political announcement hall. This time, Tubo didn't send Solons, but it seemed that Tubo had sent someone extraordinary. This person had a big belly and a round waist. He wasn't tall, but he had a red brandy nose. He squinted his eyes and observed the civil and military officials from time to time, but he didn't have a trace of satisfaction. On the other hand, the envoys from Tuyuhun, although they were wearing the same clothes as the envoys from Tubo, they were thin and tall like bamboo. When they saw the weapons that Qing Yaojin and the others were wearing, they couldn't help but have a dignified expression. Even the mustache on the corner of their mouths seemed to be trembling. Because, while he was looking at the generals, all of them were displaying their most awe-inspiring side. Everyone's hands were on the hilts of their swords. Qing Yaojin was even holding the broad axe in his arms and gently tapping the blade of the axe. Every military general's eyes were like knives as they stared at the two of them. As for the person at the top of the hall, that is, Li Shimin, dressed in a bright yellow dragon robe, he didn't even dare to look at him. "Halt, intruder." When the two of them were about to overtake Wei Zheng, who was sitting at the head of the table, little Gizi shouted coldly. Only then did the two of them stop and hurriedly kneel on the ground. "Tubo's envoy, Badargan, pays respect to your majesty, King of Tang." "Tuyuhun envoy Ao Rij pays respect to your majesty, King of Tang." "Rise." Li Shimin waved his sleeve majestically. Then he said, "Give him a seat." A moment later, a little eunuch carried 2 praying mats and placed them beside the two of them. At this time, the two of them thanked Li Shimin before sitting down. Li Shimin had been observing the two of them from the moment they entered the door. Everything can be discussed. Oh right, let's go. It's noon, time for lunch. This official has set up a banquet at Swallow Descent Restaurant. If the two of you do not mind, please come to Swallow Descent Restaurant. Chapter 373. Really? Du Ruhui was excited. He was already very old this year. Although he had worked hard and the emperor had never mistreated him, he was still somewhat dissatisfied. He hadn't done anything spectacular. The more time he spent with Zhang Feng, and the more he was influenced by Zhang Feng's calligraphy at home, the more Du Ruhui wanted to create something that could be passed down. He didn't know what this thing was. But he had this impulse. Not only him, but everyone who had interacted with Zhang Feng was also like this. Not to mention anything else, just the things that Zhang Feng had said and done, which one of them wasn't enough to shake the heavens and shake the earth. At this moment, seeing Zhang Feng like this, he couldn't help but tear up. Although Du Go was also very hard-working, the father knew better. Du Go and the others were destined to help the crown prince ascend the throne and become important members of the next generation's leadership. But he also knew that Du Go's temperament greatly disappointed the crown prince and the others. There was no other reason than that Du Go was too serious. Moreover, he was a stubborn person. He couldn't compare to Wei Zheng. Li Qingxian couldn't compare to Li Shimin either. Who knew if the Du family would be able to flourish under Du Go's leadership once these old fellows were no longer around. But ever since he learned that Zhang Feng had passed down something different to each of them, Du Ruhui's heart had become heated. He wanted the Du family to be stable. On one hand, it depended on Du Go's fortune in the future. On the other hand, it depended on whether he could create a name for the Du family before 100 years. Something that could ensure that the Du family wouldn't wither for at least 100 years. And this was something that Du Ruhui had been brooding over. Especially after seeing the Locust's great undertaking and the table of division, he felt even more urgent. Old Du. Although we haven't had many opportunities to meet, I, Zhang Feng, believe that I'm quite good at reading people. From what you said just now, I've actually already seen it. So, when Iron Bull and the others came to find me, I actually already understood. Actually, Old Li has already thought of this long ago, let alone you. If you want your descendants to continue living, then the path of commerce must not be the end. Instead, it must be how you can make use of this relationship to your advantage so that your descendants can enter an official career. That's why you let each of them master a technique? Du Ruhui asked. Zhang Feng nodded. Of course. To be honest, I didn't think so much at first. But in this feudal era, the eldest son is bound to be the heir of the family business. But what about the second son? When you're here, perhaps nothing will be a problem. Chapter 376. Du Ruhui's turbid eyes involuntarily flashed with a hint of excitement and excitement. Just a moment ago, he was still thinking about how he could do something spectacular in his lifetime. Now, didn't he have it? Didn't that person want to do something? Who didn't? Everyone wanted to. Especially people like him, who had basically reached the end of his official position. If he could do something spectacular when he was about to retire, even if he died on the spot, he would not have lived in vain. This was to bring honor to his ancestors. This was the blessing he set up for the next generation of his Du family. At the thought of this, Du Ruhui was so excited that he wanted to get up and bow again, but was pressed down on the bench by Zhang Feng speechlessly. Okay, do you really want to shorten my life? If you really want to thank me, then do it well and make more money for me. This is the key. This bone-strengthening powder, damn it, if I had known, I wouldn't have told you. Wouldn't it be better if I kept quiet and didn't make a fortune? Zhang Feng was a little depressed. Brother Zhang Feng, today I thank you for clearing my doubts. Today, I won't disturb you anymore. Our Du family will never forget your great kindness. Okay. If there's nothing else, then get out of here. Why are you being so literary? Do you think you are a great writer of that generation? Zhang Feng got up and drove him away speechlessly. Du Ruhui also knew how to behave. He hurriedly got up, dug out 3 taels of silver from his embroidered robe and put it on the table before leaving. He was not stingy, but he really didn't have much money on him. When he walked out of the pub, he looked at the locusts all over the sky. In Du Ruhui's view, how were those locusts? They were just copper coins flying all over the sky. Du Ruhui turned around and glanced at Zhang Feng's little tavern. Only then did he salute Zhang Feng as a peer before hurriedly leaving. Obviously, he forgot to ask Zhang Feng for the multiplication table. At this time, how could he still remember? Even if he remembered, so what? This thing won't run away, they can just come back when the time comes. However, Brother Zhang Feng's method must be implemented as soon as possible. This will play a big role in the emperor's plan. Furthermore, in the future, all the officials would have to use a new set of rules and regulations. To the Minister of Personnel, this was a very important matter. He had a premonition that if he really did that, the situation in the imperial court would be completely different. Who would dare to slack off? Who would dare to delay? Those who are eyeing this position will do everything they can to take you down. Although it was shameful to do so, so what? However, the thing that Brother Zhang Feng was talking about, could it really be applied? Du Ruhui couldn't help but feel confused again. If this matter was done well, then it would definitely be remembered for eternity. But what if? What if this thing didn't have any miraculous effects and instead made people feel disgusted? Du Ruhui couldn't help but slowly stop in his tracks. Looking at the locusts all over the sky, he couldn't help but think of the faces of everyone in the imperial court. Even the emperor, the princes, the lords, and the local officials. Du Ruhui couldn't help but understand. A thin layer of cold sweat appeared on his forehead, and it couldn't help but drip down. If he followed Zhang Feng's plan and followed it, he would definitely be condemned by the officials in less than a day. This was a business model. He forgot one thing. That was, until the end, they told Zhang Feng that they were businessmen. This thing was suitable for business, but not for the management system of the imperial court. Now that the imperial court had its own set of perfect system, if this thing was introduced at this time, although it could be said to have some effect, it would be the opposite of what the retired emperor and the emperor had set. Although the system of the previous dynasty was followed, to a large extent, there were slight changes. But the current system was the opposite of what the previous system had set. Once he dared to mention it, he would definitely be accused of treason. He dared to change the system set by the emperor and the retired emperor. What was this? If this wasn't treason, then what was? Du Ruhui took a deep breath. He might as well not leave. Sitting under the black locust tree at the entrance of Huitong Square, he stared blankly at the crown of the tree, which still hadn't been eaten up by the locusts. He recalled the original system of the imperial court, the criminal law, and all of them. Then, he compared them with a vague thing in his heart one by one. Slowly. He finally figured it out. It turns out that the key point lies in the completeness of this system. The degree of completeness of this system is too high, and it still needs the officials in the imperial court to supervise the implementation. But once an illegal person takes advantage of this loophole, it will definitely cause a great impact on the order of the imperial court. But, what if we add a little reward for good and punish evil to the original system of officials, and this thing of signing in at the imperial court? Chapter 377. For the next few days, all the officials were busy preparing for the locusts. There were even rumors in Chang and city from time to time. The so-called guidance from a master was a punishment from God. It was a supreme auspicious sign given by God out of pity for the Tang dynasty. But the people didn't understand. It had eaten up all the food and even the wild vegetables that everyone liked to eat. How could this thing be auspicious? It was as wide as a yiksha. How could this be called auspicious? The people were puzzled. But at this moment, if you said so, there would definitely be people pointing at your nose and scolding you for being ignorant. Why? Because this news came from the inside of the palace. His Majesty had already said that this thing was an auspicious sign. How could you say that it was a pest with a snap of your fingers? Are you tired of living? Such things kept happening in Chang and city. As the matter was fermenting, the news of the mysterious bone-strengthening powder had also spread out. It was even more bizarre. In a tea house. The storyteller came early in the morning, which was rare. The locusts were all over the sky. Basically, no one could do anything. If they stayed at home, they would get sick. It was also unbearable to stay with their wives every day. Fortunately, now everyone had a little money left in their pockets. So, this cheap and affordable tea house became the best place for people to escape the summer heat and find work. The tea house, which usually had a bleak business, now became the most popular place in Chang and city. Bang! When the storyteller, Blind Wang, slapped the tea table hard, the noisy tea house instantly quieted down. Blind Wang was not in a hurry. He slowly pulled out the folding fan from the back of his head and slowly fanned himself. Then, he said, "Dear fellow villagers, today, Blind Wang will talk about something different. Otherwise, if you've already vomited after hearing about other things, I would have King vomited as well." Ha ha ha. The people burst into laughter and were instantly interested. "Blind Wang, what are you going to talk about today? Are you talking about what happened last night with Widow's son from Happy Village in the east of the city? Or were you chased out by some customer who found out you stole books?" Ahahaha. The laughter of the crowd did not make Blind Wang jump up and down. The people of Jianghu had 3 good things. The first was to squat in Swallow Descent brothel to see the real courtesan. The second was to stroll along the newly built river and stroll around the eastern and western markets with his hands behind his back. However, at this juncture, these 2 things could not be done. Swallow Descent restaurant's doors were locked tightly, afraid that the lecher would not be able to hold himself back and barge in. As for the riverside, the eastern and western markets had become the breeding grounds of the locusts. That fellow, with a single stomp, you could crush several locusts. Who would dare to go out? What about the third one? Naturally, it was because of Blind Wang. But it was very rare. This time, Blind Wang acted as if he didn't hear the teasing of the crowd. He continued to wave the thick, sticky fan with a smile on his face. Even the words on the paper could not be seen. It was as if he had the pearl of wisdom in his hands. Ayaya. Old man is reading a sage's book. How can a scholar like me do such a dirty thing? Today, old man is going to talk about the auspicious signs flying in the sky. Nonsense. When the crowd heard this, they could not help but roll their eyes. It was this old thing again. Blind Wang said slowly, "Last night, I don't know how many of you have heard of the bone strengthening powder." Bone strengthening powder? What is that? I seem to have eavesdropped on the boss saying something. It seems that this thing is something extraordinary. Yes. This master is right. Blind Wang suddenly slapped his fan on the palm of his hand and said, "This bone-strengthening powder is indeed a wonderful thing. Last night, outside Taichung Temple, I heard a woman talking about this thing. That woman seemed to be the wife of one of the lords in Taichung Temple. That woman seemed to be asking for the bone-strengthening powder from her old father. I've heard of it. As long as you drink a bowl of the bone-strengthening powder, even though it is only the size of a teacup, it is worth a big bowl of mutton soup." What? This is so magical. Blind Wang, you're not fooling people, are you? How can there be such a thing in this world? Blind Wang shook his head mysteriously. When the crowd was almost finished, he continued, "Not only that, old man also heard that this thing can strengthen the bones. Although it is not the thing that can rejuvenate one's youth, the old man in his 70s or 80s only needs to drink this thing for 3 days to straighten his back in an instant. Moreover, he can carry a bucket of water with one hand and walk for 10 miles without blushing or panting." Hiss. Everyone heard this. They could not help but gasp. Impossible. Blind Wang, maybe you're fooling people again. *CK your grandma. If this thing is really so awesome, why haven't we heard of it? Everyone was furious. However, Blind Wang only moved his lips slightly. This thing fell from heaven when Master Yuan Tiangang prayed to heaven on the birthday of the retired emperor last time. Moreover, the emperor and the retired emperor personally tried it. All the ministers in the court have tried it. Do you think that the emperor is fooling you? This. Chapter 378. Li Shimin was very pleased. Especially when he looked at the documents that had been sent back from Chang'an. It was as if he was looking at a lump of gold that had fallen from the sky. The rumors had indeed spread from here. Zhang Sun Wuji was very smart when it came to doing things like this. Moreover, he had already done it once. It would be strange if something went wrong again. Moreover, at this time, everyone had been affected by the locust plague. Everyone had suffered. Who wouldn't want to make money at this time? The matter of the bone-strengthening powder had been settled. Next up, Just as Li Shimin was happily thinking about what to do next, he suddenly saw a different memorial in the pile of documents. What was different about it? This memorial was actually sent by Du Ruhui in his personal name. Was there a need to do this? Li Shimin looked at the thick memorial and flipped it open curiously. The words, "On Duty Reward and Punishment System," that entered his eyes deeply attracted his attention. Li Shimin couldn't help but be interested. The Minister of Personnel had actually used such a method to hand over the memorial. What did this mean? It was obviously something that could be done by just opening his mouth. That meant, looking at the memorial, the joy on Li Shimin's face slowly froze. "Little Gizi, summon Du Ruhui." "Yes." Li Shimin's expression turned serious. No wonder he would use such a method to hand over the memorial. If others knew about this, what would it mean? This would be treason. Daring to violate the laws of the imperial court was already a violation of the interests of the imperial family. However, Li Shimin knew that if it were an ordinary person, he wouldn't even look at such a thing. He would just wave his hand. Strike first. However, Du Ruhui was different. If he could say it, it meant that this matter was very serious. Moreover, Li Shimin thought about it. There was indeed a problem with the imperial court system. Moreover, was this really something that Du Ruhui could come up with? He didn't believe it. Instead, he saw Zhang Feng's shadow between the lines. Moreover, didn't Du Ruhui go to Zhang Feng's place the day before yesterday? Thinking of Zhang Feng, Li Shimin's face had a touch of excitement. A moment later, Du Ruhui hurried into the imperial study. "This old subject Du Ruhui pays respect to your majesty. Minister Du, please rise. Hurry up and tell me, what's the deal with this reward and punishment?" Replying to your majesty. "This is something I came across by chance the day before yesterday." Li Shimin pursed his lips. "Speak human language." Du Ruhui said, "Since your majesty has seen through it, this was indeed Brother Zhang Feng's idea. Now, because of the locusts, everyone in the imperial court is united. This is a good thing, but the drawbacks of not doing their duty for a long time still exist. Moreover, now everyone is trying to reap benefits. In the long run, who can respect the discipline of the imperial court? So, you discussed with Brother Zhang Feng and came up with this thing?" Li Shimin sat next to Du Ruhui and drank tea. He glanced at the memorial on the table and said, "That's right. However, this thing was basically made by this old subject. It was also because of one sentence from Brother Zhang Feng." "What sentence?" Li Shimin was interested. "He said that these people are temporary workers for you." Li Shimin heard this. He couldn't help but frown. But the next moment, he couldn't help but ask, "Do you mean that the system of the imperial court should be strictly improved?" "Yes, your majesty. You've seen it before. Everyone is lazy. Although your majesty is in favor of spreading the word, you've also seen that the disadvantages are obvious. That is, the people of the 5 families and 7 nobles, as well as the Guanlong and Shandong nobles, don't do anything for the imperial court. As a result, although there are many people in the imperial court, some of them die of boredom, and some of them die of exhaustion. There are even some who take idle jobs and idle around all day. We couldn't target them before, but now that your majesty has taken a side in the matter of the locusts, if we let them go on like this at this time, who in the imperial court wants to do anything for them? I'm worried that if this kind of thing can't be rectified for a long time, the consequences will be unimaginable if everyone in the imperial court imitates it. The big reshuffle this time is an opportunity. That's why when I went to Brother Zhang Feng's place, I was a little depressed, so I went to Brother Zhang Feng to complain. But Brother Zhang Feng thought it was a small matter, so we talked about it. It was also under Brother Zhang Feng's guidance that I came up with this reward and punishment system. Although this system is new, it's all simplified and added according to the original laws of the Tang dynasty. As he spoke, Du Ruhui excitedly knelt on the ground and said, Your Majesty, this old subject knows the consequences of breaking the laws of the Great Tang without permission. Thus, this old subject risks death to request Your Majesty to carry out this decree. Li Shimin was speechless. He personally helped Du Ruhui up and said, I didn't say anything. I've also seen this. I approved. You're tuning into the Carefree Valley YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.